Chapter 466. The aura emitted by this flame was very similar to that of the Tai essence gold. It seemed that the Tai essence gold had condensed such a flame under the nourishment of extremely rich metal spiritual energy. The Tai essence gold had an extremely strong murderous aura. Perhaps this flame had similar characteristics. Of course, it was hard to say what it could do. The current spiritual energy fluctuation of this flame was not strong. It was only of the third level of the middle grade. Perhaps it had not been nurtured for long enough. With this metal spiritual fire, the 5 element spiritual fires were finally gathered. This piece of Tai essence gold was worthy of being a 4th level middle grade material. The murderous aura it emitted was extremely sharp. Even with Wang Daoyuan's physical body, it still left small wounds. Wang Daoyuan was so excited that he did not notice that there were many small wounds on his body. He put the entire piece of Tai essence gold into the space of the spiritual pearl and placed it near the metal spiritual vein. The metal spiritual fire came out of the Tai essence gold and merged with the spiritual vein. The Tai essence gold was put into the 100 spirit ring. After all, this thing's murderous aura was too strong. Directly putting it in the space of the spiritual pearl might destroy many spiritual plants. After his consciousness left the space, Wang Daoyuan felt a little pain on his body. At this time he was already covered in wounds. His clothes were also torn. Although the wounds were not deep, the murderous aura had entered his body and caused extreme pain. He mobilized his fire spiritual energy to consume the murderous aura. Only then did he feel better. Without the murderous aura, these wounds were just ordinary external injuries. He used the rejuvenation technique on himself and the wounds were almost healed. Then he checked the metal spiritual material vein that he had discovered earlier. He released the dust-returning flame at the vein and continued to burn the passage. He did find some ores. However, these ores were mostly black iron crystals. The spiritual energy fluctuations were at least of the 4th level lower grade. A few of them were of the 4th level middle grade. In addition to the black iron crystals, there were very few pieces of Tai essence gold the size of a finger. The Tai essence gold vein should be above. However, Wang Daoyuan did not dare to dig any more. The Tai essence gold vein was extremely important to any force. There would definitely be many backup plans to protect the vein. If he continued to dig up, he might be discovered. He had already obtained the spirit fire and a large piece of level 4 Tai essence gold. Although there was a hole in the inside, the remaining part still weighed more than 50 kilograms. In addition to the heaven ferocious metal he obtained earlier, it was sufficient for him to refine the white tiger saber to medial grade tier 4. There was no need for him to continue taking risks. Since such a large piece of primordial gold essence and a metal attribute spiritual fire could be found here, they must not have been discovered. He wasn't sure how far this place was from the ground, but he roughly estimated that it was at least more than 50,000 feet away. If it were anywhere else, the spiritual sense of a golden core cultivator might be able to detect something. However, this place was near a rank 4 spirit vein. Furthermore, there was a baleful aura and a murderous aura from primordial unity essence gold, which interfered with his spiritual sense. Even a peak golden core cultivator would not be able to detect this place with their divine sense. After he took away the metallic spirit fire, the cracks in the rocks below were still spewing out metallic spirit chi. The concentration of spiritual energy in Blood Demon City shouldn't have any obvious changes. There was no need to mobilize so many people to investigate the situation of the spirit veins. In order to not cause too much damage to the spirit vein, he had to leave this place as soon as possible. Before he left, he summoned a wisp of dust-returning flame and burned all the bloodstains he left behind. This was to prevent others from discovering the situation here and tracking him through the bloodstains. Demonic cultivators of the blood demon lineage were best at playing such tricks. After cleaning up the traces, Wang Daoyuan withdrew from the spiritual eye and used the earth mountain technique to seal the tunnel he had dug earlier. At this time, in an underground stone room of a palace in Blood Demon City, a young cultivator and a middle-aged cultivator were meditating. The young cultivator woke up from his meditation and said, "I feel a slight fluctuation in the spirit vein spirit chi. It's a little different from before, but I can't tell what the difference is." The middle-aged cultivator smiled. "There are indeed some fluctuations. The spirit chi is slightly denser than before, so it's normal for the spirit vein to fluctuate slightly. It's just that you've just formed your golden core not long ago. Cultivators below the golden core realm won't be able to detect such minute fluctuations. After experiencing so much, they won't find it strange anymore. It's not a bad thing anyway, so you don't have to worry about it." The young cultivator nodded and closed his eyes, continuing to meditate. Wang Daoyuan naturally didn't know about the matter of the two golden core cultivators and continued to seal the tunnel. He wasn't afraid. Even if a golden core cultivator sensed the abnormality, they wouldn't be able to use their spiritual sense to probe the spiritual eye. If they wanted to get to the bottom of the situation, they would have to investigate many mines. It was impossible for a golden core cultivator to do this, so they could only send out Zifu disciples. A place like the innate fiend gold mine was so poorly managed that the mine tunnels were like a maze. Spiritual sense was also restricted here. Zifu disciples might need a long time to figure out the mine tunnels, so there was no need to rush to escape. The work of sealing the tunnel was much faster than digging the tunnel. It only took 4 to 5 days to seal all the tunnels that had been dug out. After returning to the cave, Wang Daoyuan's spiritual sense entered the space of the spiritual pearl. The scene in the space gave him a huge shock. The 5 spirit veins had all grown to 3 meters in length. The spirit veins had already reached the upper grade of the second stage, and the density of the spirit chi spewing out was still rapidly increasing. As the driving force behind the changes in the spirit veins, the 5 spirit fires had also undergone some changes. The mound of dirt below the dust-returning flame was slowly growing larger. Moreover, the speed at which the earth attribute spirit veins produced soil had increased dramatically. Wang Daoyuan also noticed that at the edge of the spiritual pearl space, there was a circle of new soil that hadn't been planted. To him, 40 mu of space wasn't enough, so he had to frequently remove low-grade spirit plants. There was no way he could leave an empty space outside. He used his spiritual sense to measure the entire space, and the area of the spirit field seemed to have increased. The additional area of the spiritual fields was very small, less than 100 acres in total. For the entire space of the spiritual pearl, it was a drop in the ocean. But if it continued to increase, it would still be considerable. The increase in the space of the spiritual pearl was definitely caused by the 5 elemental spirit fires. The growth of the spirit fires was extremely fast, and their influence on the space of the spiritual pearl would also increase. The growth of the space of the spiritual pearl should also continue to increase. He also observed the changes in the other spirit fires. The life spirit fire didn't change much. It was just that the flame had become a little bigger, and the life force it produced was richer. A spirit spring appeared where the Gui water death flame was. The amount of water in this spirit spring was extremely small, and it would take half an hour to fill a teacup. If it weren't for the bubbles that appeared from time to time, Wang Daoyuan really wouldn't have noticed it. The spring water that gushed out was exactly the same as the Gui water death spring. It also contained water spirit energy and pure yin qi, but the concentration was much lower. Now this spirit spring was only second grade. The spring water of the spirit spring came from the water spirit vein. As the spirit fire strengthened, the grade of the water spirit vein would also gradually increase, and the spirit spring would also grow. In time, it might be able to catch up to the Gui water death spring. On the side of the scarlet Yangchu fire, the flame was a little bigger, and the fire spirit energy and pure yang qi produced was a little more. The pure yang qi spread out, and merged with the pure yin qi produced by the Gui water death flame above the dust-returning flame, producing traces of purple qi. The flame of the metal attribute spirit fire was now more than 3 inches tall, emitting traces of killing intent, exactly the same as the killing intent of the Tai essence gold. It seemed that this spirit fire had inherited the characteristics of the Tai essence gold. If he refined it into a spiritual power seed, his metal-attributed spiritual power would be infused with killing intent. Together with the white tiger blade, its lethality would definitely increase greatly. Moreover, this metal attribute spirit power was especially suitable for nurturing the white tiger blade. It was born from the Tai essence gold, and its characteristics were similar to the Tai essence gold. Wang Daoyuan named it the Tai golden flame. Chapter 467. Wang Daoyuan tested the flow of time in and out of the space. It was still 40 times faster and did not increase. He did not know if the flow of time would increase after he repaired the crack in the spirit pearl. If he stayed in the mine, he would not be able to find out what was happening outside. If anyone discovered the change in the spirit vein, he would have to dig a hole and escape. If no one discovered the change in the spirit vein, he could hand over 250 kilograms of heaven ferocious metal and walk out openly. Since he did not know anything now, he could not take the risk. No one would be able to find him for the time being, and he could just stay in Jingping's cave abode for the time being. Now that he had gathered all 5 element spirit fires, it was time to prepare for refining them. Refining spirit fires was extremely dangerous, and if he did not do it properly, there was a high chance he would be devoured by the spirit fire. If he was lucky, his dantian and meridians would be severely damaged and he would become a cripple. If he was lucky, he would be burned to ashes by the spirit fire. There were many ways to refine spirit fires and each had its pros and cons. The 5 elements perfected being also recorded the way to refine spirit fires. His method was to first extract the essence of the spirit fire and condense the spirit energy seed. He would then draw the entire spirit fire into his body and fuse it with the spirit energy seed. Because the two were similar in nature, they could fuse well. The spirit fire would not reject the spirit energy seed too much and would not cause a backlash. The biggest flaw of the 5 elements perfected beings method was that cultivators who did not cultivate the 5 spirit immortal transformation technique would not be able to use it. Perfected Lord Bai Ling's fire controlling records also left a method to fuse spirit fires. Wang Daoyuan's cultivation technique was the 5 spirit immortal transformation technique after all, and it was more suitable to use the 5 elements perfected beings method. Even though he had all 5 element spirit fires, he could not start refining them now. The 5 spirit fires were of different grades. The life spirit fire, dust returning flame, Gui water hell flame and scarlet yang true flame were all superior grade 3 spirit fires. The newly obtained Tai golden flame was a middle grade 3 spirit fire. Due to the difference in grades, the 5 spirit energy seeds would not be balanced after refinement. In his last words, the 5 elements perfected being repeatedly warned that he had to balance the spirit energy seeds or he would lose his life. The 4 superior grade 3 spirit fires came from different sources and grew at different speeds as well. The dust returning flame was a superior grade 4 spirit fire in the hands of the 5 elements perfected being. The Gui water death flame was born from a 4th level spirit spring and was once a 4th level spirit fire. The scarlet yang real fire was even more impressive. When it was in the hands of the 100 spirits true lord, it was at least a level 5 spiritual fire. These spiritual fires used to be of very high grades. After refining it, his growth would be even faster. Even if they were of the same grade when refined, the 3 flames would grow faster when cultivating in the future. He needed to constantly balance them in order to ensure that the 5 element spiritual fires grew at the same speed. If the grade was different during refinement, it would be much more difficult to maintain the balance of the 5 element spiritual fire in the future. It might even affect the speed of cultivation. To be safe, he decided to let them grow in the space of the spirit orb first. Once they were of the same rank, he would refine them into his body. The growth of the spiritual pearl space also required spiritual fire. After refining the spiritual fire, it would affect the growth of the spiritual pearl space. No matter how important the space in the spiritual orb was, it was only a resource. His ultimate goal was to make himself stronger. After refining the spiritual fire, even if he did not take any elixirs, he could quickly cultivate to the peak of the golden core realm. His own cultivation was definitely more important than the growth of the spiritual pearl space. However, it was not impossible to balance the growth of his own cultivation and the spiritual pearl space. The scarlet yang true fire was different from the other 4 flames. It was not naturally formed but artificially created. Back then, after perfected Lord Bai Ling obtained the scarlet feathered crow, he used the scarlet feathered crow's natal true fire to condense the scarlet yang true fire. The method of condensing the spiritual fire was recorded in perfected Lord Bai Ling's fire control records. A small portion of the spiritual fire's origin was separated, which was the fire seed. Then, the essence of the spiritual fire was extracted and condensed into a pseudo-spiritual fire. With sufficient spirit chi, pseudo-spiritual fire could burn stably. However, it was extremely fragile and would be extinguished easily at the slightest movement. Furthermore, if it was provided with sufficient spirit chi, its growth would be extremely slow. When the spiritual fire's origin was sufficient, the quantitative change would lead to a qualitative change and it would become a real spiritual fire. The original spiritual fire would be severely injured after losing a portion of its origin. However, as long as there was sufficient spirit chi, it could still recover. In the process of condensing the pseudo-spiritual fire, if there was not enough spirit chi, it was likely to fail. Even if it succeeded, the pseudo-spiritual fire would need to be nurtured for a long time. Back then, perfected Lord Bai Ling used more than 200 years to nurture the pseudo-spiritual fire into the scarlet yang true fire. During the nurturing process, the pseudo-spiritual fire could be extinguished easily and had to be paid attention at all times. Wang Daoyuan could also use this method to condense 5 pseudo-spiritual fires and nurture them in the space of the spiritual pearl. Even if the pseudo-spiritual fire was nurtured into a real spiritual fire, its grade would not be comparable to the original spiritual fire for a long time. However, it should be enough to maintain the growth of the spiritual pearl space. With the flow of time 40 times faster, there was no need to worry about long nurturing and slow growth. The original spiritual fire was stronger, so naturally, it would be refined into the body to assist in cultivation. In this divine ferocious gold mine, the most suitable pseudo-spiritual fire to condense the Tai golden flame was the Tai golden flame. However, the Tai golden flame's grade was the lowest, and Wang Daoyuan did not have the experience of condensing a pseudo-spiritual fire, so he might fail. If he failed a few times, too much of the spiritual fire's origin would be consumed, and it would take a long time to raise its grade. Naturally, the Tai golden flame could not be used for such a destructive experiment. The one that was least afraid of damaging its origin was the life spiritual fire. When Wang Daoyuan first obtained the life spiritual fire, it was still hidden in the top bud of the peach tree sapling. Now the flame was more than 10 inches tall. With the support of the peach tree sapling, its growth speed was far from what other spiritual fires could compare to. Even if the origin of the spiritual fire was damaged, it could recover quickly. The surroundings were filled with metal element spirit chi and malevolent aura. Condensing a pseudo-spiritual fire could only be done in the space of the spiritual pearl. His spirit entered the space of the spiritual pearl, extracted a wisp of the life spiritual fire, and injected spirit energy to strengthen it. Finally, it formed a fist-sized ball of green flame. Then, his spirit consciousness probed the boundary between the life spiritual fire and the top bud of the peach tree sapling. Half of the life spiritual fire's origin was in the top bud, and the other half was in the flame. Condensing a pseudo-spiritual fire required about 1/10 of the spiritual fire's origin. The life spiritual fire was gentler and could be directly probed with spirit consciousness to retrieve the origin of the spiritual fire. Soon, his spirit consciousness separated a sesame-sized green flame from the life spiritual fire. After the flame was separated, the height of the life spiritual fire, which was originally more than 10 inches tall, instantly decreased by an inch. Even though the flame was small, it possessed an extremely rich life force. If he refined this thing directly, there was even a possibility of reviving the dead. The origin of the spiritual fire was also considered a natural treasure. No one knew how it was formed and no one could create it casually. Even some high-grade cultivation methods required the use of heavenly materials and earthly treasures in order to cultivate spiritual fire. He had truly never heard of any ancient mighty being who could use spirit chi to create the origin of the spiritual fire directly. Injecting a sesame-sized flame into a fist-sized flame was the embryonic form of the pseudo-spiritual fire. Next, Wang Daoyuan converted all the spirit energy in his body into wood element and channeled it into the space of the spiritual pearl. His spirit controlled all the wood element spirit energy and injected it into the embryonic form of the pseudo-spiritual fire. After receiving a large amount of wood element spirit chi, the fist-sized green spirit fire did not grow. Instead, it shrunk continuously. The spirit energy within was absorbed by the sesame-sized origin of the spiritual fire, and the origin of the spiritual fire was also gradually growing. Before long, all the spirit energy in Wang Daoyuan's body was exhausted. As the pseudo-spiritual fire was not formed, it could not rely on the spirit chi in the space to burn on its own. The moment he stopped injecting spirit energy, the ball of spiritual fire would be extinguished instantly. It was useless even if he drank wine to recover his spirit energy. At this moment he could not circulate his cultivation technique. The spirit energy that he replenished was also not the wood element spirit energy with vitality and was useless. Chapter 468. At this moment, Wang Daoyuan did not have any better ideas and could only extract the spiritual flame essence from the life spiritual fire. However, it was a pity that most of the spiritual energy was used to strengthen the origin of the spiritual flame and there would not be much essence left. There would only be a large amount of spiritual flame essence left when he used the dust-returning flame to burn the stone wall or the Gui water nether spring. There was not much essence left in the life spiritual fire and it was not enough to form the pseudo-spiritual flame. He was deep in the mineral vein and there was no way for him to find wood elemental spiritual energy. He was too arrogant. Back then, perfected Lord Hundred Spirits only formed the pseudo-spiritual flame when he was in the late-stage golden core stage. Furthermore, he had the help of the red-feathered crow back then. His current strength was too far from that of a true expert. There was no hope of forming it successfully and the pseudo-spiritual flame was about to be extinguished. Helpless, he sent the pseudo-spiritual flame to the side of the peach tree sapling. When forming the pseudo-spiritual flame, it must not come into contact with the original spiritual flame. Because the two had the same origin, the spiritual flame would devour the pseudo-spiritual flame the moment they met. Instead of wasting the spiritual flame's origin and essence, it was better to merge them into the life spiritual fire. The green pseudo-spiritual flame was not absorbed by the life spiritual fire when it came into contact with the peach tree sapling. Instead, the peach tree sapling grew a half-inch long side branch that carried the pseudo-spiritual flame. Pure wood elemental spiritual energy was injected into the pseudo-spiritual flame. There was no need for Wang Daoyuan to make a move now. Since the peach tree sapling could nurture the life spiritual fire to this extent, it was not a problem for it to stabilize the pseudo-spiritual flame. Wang Daoyuan had always been curious about the peach tree sapling. Through the 5 Element Sage's Beiyuan records, he knew that the peach tree sapling should be a high-grade spiritual wood that was at least grade 5. However, he had no clue as to what kind of spiritual plant it was. Perfected Lord 100 spirits should know about the peach tree sapling, but it was a pity that Wang Daoyuan only obtained his cultivation technique and inheritance of fire control. The records of spiritual plants should be kept in the Elixir Hall in Perfected Lord 100 Spirits' cave abode. It was a pity that the items in the Elixir Hall were divided by the 9 forces and Wang Daoyuan did not get anything. The wood-attributed false spirit flame should be stable. With the help of the peach blossom sapling, it should not take long for the false spirit flame to grow into a spirit flame. There was no need for him to care about the rest. It seemed that if he wanted to condense the pseudo-spirit fire again in the future, he would have to make use of the geographical advantage. For example, Mingsha Plain's pseudo-spiritual fire was more suitable for condensing the dust-returning flame. Release the returning dust flame and burn him underground for a month or 2. You can get as much returning dust flame essence as you want. The fire attribute pseudo-spiritual fire was easy to deal with. There was a fiery sunstone mine under the Huangwei mountain. However, igniting the mineral vein might summon the lava. It would be fine if it didn't erupt, but once it did, Zifu disciples wouldn't even have a chance to flee. There was also the underground karst cave on the other side of the Gui water nether spring, which could lead directly to the magma, and could also be used to condense the fire attribute pseudo-spiritual fire. The best place to condense the water attribute pseudo-spirit fire was the Gui water nether spring. Metal-type pseudo-spiritual fire was the most difficult to find. If he wanted to take advantage of the geographical location, he would have to find at least a large 3rd-grade metal or vein or a 3rd-grade high-grade metal-type spirit vein. It was definitely not suitable to do this in this mine. Obtaining large amounts of metal-type spiritual fire essence was not like using the returning dust flame to pave the way. When condensing the pseudo-spiritual fire, he had to keep the Tai golden flame burning intensely for a long time in order to obtain sufficient spiritual fire essence. This was the underground of Blood Demon City. If he caused such a huge commotion, it would definitely disturb the metal-type spirit vein here. By then, as long as there were golden core cultivators in Blood Demon City, he would be discovered. There was no need to risk his life for the sake of condensing a pseudo-spiritual fire. Wang Daoyuan stayed in the cave abode for half a year and planned to leave as well. He had already found his main target, the metal-type spiritual fire, and also found a lot of heaven ferocious gold and a large piece of Tai essence gold. There was no point in continuing to stay here. He had to leave the tiger's den as soon as possible. In the past half a year, the embryonic form of the wood-type spiritual fire in the space of the spirit pearl had made considerable progress. On the side branches of the peach blossom sapling, the wood-type pseudo-spiritual fire had already stabilized and was no longer in its embryonic form. It could slowly absorb the dispersing wood-type spirit chi and convert it into spiritual fire essence. The peach blossom sapling was still injecting pure spirit chi and life force endlessly. It was only a matter of time before it turned into a true spiritual fire. He had also sent out his clone Zheng Ping to patrol outside many times. However, he did not discover anyone entering. Could it be that the cultivators of Blood Demon City truly did not notice that he had arrived at the metal-type spirit vein and taken away the spiritual fire? Or could it be that the upper echelons of Blood Demon City had discovered the abnormality of the spirit vein? However, they did not know what was wrong and were planning to wait for him to jump out on his own accord? If it was the former, he would be fine after handing over 250 caddies of heaven ferocious gold. He would then turn in the mission and leave Blood Demon City. However, if it was the latter, it would be dangerous. This heaven ferocious gold vein had been abandoned for many years and the remaining ores were extremely rare. If he were to successfully dig out 250 caddies of heaven ferocious gold in just a few years, it would be too conspicuous. The upper echelons of Blood Demon City were thinking of waiting for someone to jump out. If he were to hand over the heaven ferocious gold, it might arouse suspicion. Demonic cultivators were not reasonable people. If there was anything suspicious, they would capture him immediately. While it did not matter if he were to hand over 250 caddies of heaven ferocious gold, he could not risk his life for it. After careful consideration, Wang Daoyuan decided to dig a tunnel to escape. With the Tai golden flame and the returning dust flame, it would be much easier to dig an escape tunnel. Zheng Ping used to be a member of the Blood Demon Army and had a better understanding of the situation in Blood Demon City. Blood Demon City was located at the northern edge of the underground space. There were many underground mines. The entrance to the Heaven Ferocious Gold Mine was located to the west of Blood Demon City. The mine extended to the north. Above him was no longer the underground space of Blood Demon City, but the mountain range of Blood Demon Ridge. According to Zheng Ping's memories, Blood Demon City had very few properties in the northwest. Every once in a while Blood Demon Army cultivators would patrol there. There were no permanent cultivators. Of course, the information that Zheng Ping knew was all from over 200 years ago. It was hard to say what the current situation was. To the south was to continue deeper into the southern wasteland. To the north was the main metal-type spirit vein. To the northeast was the Tai pure gold mine. To the west were many properties of Blood Demon City. These places were guarded by Blood Demon Army cultivators for a long time. To dig a tunnel to escape, the northwest was indeed the best choice. He took out a wisp of the returning dust flame and a wisp of the Tai golden flame and placed them on the rock wall in the northwest of the cave. The combination of the two flames was very suitable for this place. The Tai golden flame burned the metal-type spirit energy in the rock layer, leaving behind loose rocks. The returning dust flame burned these rocks very quickly. In about 2 hours he could advance about 200 feet. Moreover, the two spirit flames could obtain enough spirit energy by burning the rock layer. He did not need to inject spirit energy to maintain the flames. In order to prevent too much movement, he kept extracting the essence of the two flames and injecting it into the space of the spirit pearl to nourish the spirit flames. After more than a year, Wang Daoyuan had dug more than 1,000 miles of tunnel. While digging, he also harvested more than 50 kilograms of level 3 heaven murderous gold. In addition to digging, he also sealed the tunnel near the cave for thousands of feet to prevent others from discovering his escape route. Using the spirit-seeking compass, he found that 300 feet ahead was no longer a mountain, but an empty environment. After investigating the surroundings, he found that this place was a cliff. In other words, he had already left Blood Demon City's territory and was outside. He hurriedly dug forward. In just half a day he had dug through the remaining rock layer. The moment the tunnel connected to the outside world, a gust of fresh air rushed to his face. His heart was suddenly enlightened. Before he could enjoy the fresh air, he heard a shout. Where did this wild kid come from? What are you doing sneaking around here? Chapter 469. Wang Daoyuan came out of the tunnel and looked up, only to see two late-stage Zifu realm devil cultivators flying towards him. These two were burly men. One had a curly beard while the other had a goatee. They were both wearing the uniform of the Blood Demon Army. This place wasn't far from Blood Demon City. Once they started fighting, it was very likely that they would attract a large number of Blood Demon Army soldiers. It wasn't impossible to alarm Golden Core Devil cultivators. At this time he had to be courageous and pretend that he had come here by chance. He took out his bone sword and released his metal attribute spiritual energy. A baleful aura enveloped his body as he replied, "What do you care what I do here? If you want to kill me and steal my treasures, then come and try. Just the two of you aren't necessarily my match." Seeing him so arrogant, the two men were startled. Normally, when they were patrolling, the loose cultivators they met would be obedient upon seeing them wearing the uniform of the Blood Demon Army. This was the first time they had seen someone who dared to be so rude to them. The curly-bearded cultivator asked, "This is our territory. Since you're sneaking around here, we naturally have to investigate. Tell us, what are you doing here?" Wang Daoyuan continued to play dumb. Who doesn't know how to talk empty words? This is the wilderness and there's no defensive formation on the mountain. You say it's your territory, but I say it's mine. Don't talk nonsense with me. If you want to fight, then do it quickly. After beating you up, I still have to open up a cave and cultivate. Hearing this, the two men looked at each other. They really did believe that he had come here by chance and didn't know that this was Blood Demon City. The goatee cultivator asked, "May I ask where Dao you came from and why you opened up a cave here? If you can explain it clearly, then there's no need to fight. If you can't explain it clearly and fight, then it won't be just the two of us dealing with you." Hearing this, Wang Daoyuan knew that his act of foolishness had worked. He said disdainfully, "I'm not afraid of your numbers. I'll kill all of you. I came from 10,000 Blades Mountain. Devil cultivators didn't have a good time there, so I came to Blood Demon Ridge. I saw that the spiritual energy here was dense, so I settled down here. What? This ownerless mountain doesn't allow me to open up a cave? 10,000 Blades Mountain was at the edge of the southern wasteland west of Mingsha. There was a third-grade metal attribute spirit vein there, and there were many different kinds of metal mines there. The 10,000 Blades Mountain was made up of many narrow mountain ranges that ran from north to south. Looking from above, it looked like countless blades were pointing towards the sky, hence the name 10,000 Blades Mountain. The two members of the Blood Demon Army naturally knew about the 1,000 Blades Mountain. This area was indeed the place with the densest spiritual energy in the entire Blood Demon Ridge. Without knowing the situation of Blood Demon City, there was nothing strange about opening up an immortal cave here. The two of them could tell that Wang Daoyuan's strength wasn't ordinary. With his cultivation at the middle stage of the Violet Palace realm, he was confident in facing two late-stage Violet Palace realm experts. His strength was definitely not bad, so he wanted to recruit him. The bearded cultivator smiled. This is the core territory of our Blood Demon lineage. Blood Demon City is also nearby, so it's not an ownerless mountain. We are members of the Blood Demon Army and are responsible for protecting the Blood Demon City. It was not impossible for Daoyu to live nearby. As long as one joined the Blood Demon Army, they would have a special cave residence and various resources. With Daoyu's strength, it wouldn't be impossible for him to become a commander in the future. Wang Daoyuan naturally wasn't willing. He replied, I've heard of Blood Demon City, but I don't know where it is. I didn't expect to run into it here. However, I don't like restrictions and won't join any power. Since this place isn't ownerless, I'll look for another place. Daoyu, if you want to force me to stay, you can give it a try. The two believed that he was a new wandering cultivator, so there was no need for them to act. The bearded cultivator cupped his hands. Since Daoyu isn't willing to join us, we won't force you. In the future, if you want to, you can come here at any time. Wang Daoyuan cupped his hands. Since Daoyu is willing to let me go, I still have to find a suitable cave residence elsewhere. I won't stay here any longer. Farewell. After speaking, he rode his bone sword and headed north. The two of them even cupped their hands. We'll meet again. After Wang Daoyuan left, the bearded cultivator said, Let's go down and block the hole that kid dug to prevent the spirit vein from being damaged. Seeing the two of them land, Wang Daoyuan knew that they were going to check the tunnel. A tunnel that was more than 500 kilometers long could not be hidden from the two of them. He immediately took out the windfire flying kite and drove it to head north. The two of them landed at the entrance of the cave and used their spiritual senses to probe inside, but they couldn't find the bottom. The bearded cultivator sensed carefully and asked, Do you feel a baleful aura? The bearded cultivator used his spiritual senses to probe and nodded. There is indeed a baleful aura. However, that kid is full of baleful aura himself. It's not strange for him to have a baleful aura here since he opened up a cave residence here, right? The bearded cultivator shook his head. No, this baleful aura doesn't seem to be formed from killing too many people. It's more like the baleful aura of the earth vein. Furthermore, this tunnel is extremely deep and my spiritual senses can't reach the bottom. It's also very narrow. People would have to bend over to enter, so who would open up an immortal cave like that? There's baleful aura of the earth vein and an extremely deep hole. Not good. This person escaped from a place with baleful aura. He might be an expert who escaped from the heavenly baleful gold mine. Most of the people locked up there have extraordinary statuses. Quickly send a message to the Grand Commander and report this matter. If my judgment is correct and this person escapes, it'll be a huge mess. The bearded cultivator nodded and took out a communication jade talisman to send a message to the Grand Commander. Wang Daoyuan had just flown a few hundred kilometers, and Blood Demon City was more than 6,000 kilometers away from the southern border of Mingsha Plain. Even if he drove the windfire flying kite at full speed, it would still take him 2 hours to reach there. In order to avoid being too conspicuous, he lowered his flying altitude and flew close to the mountain. After 5 minutes, 3 late-stage Zifu realm cultivators suddenly appeared in front of him to block his path. They seemed to be from the Blood Demon Army. The 3 of them were about to ask questions when Wang Daoyuan took out the white tiger blade and used the sword shadow divine light technique to condense 10 sword shadows. The 3 of them hurriedly took out their magic treasures to defend themselves. One of the elderly cultivators shouted, Daoyu, don't be afraid. We just want to ask you some questions. We don't have any ill intentions. Wang Daoyuan couldn't be bothered to listen to his nonsense. You don't have any ill intentions. Now that you know what I did, you have ill intentions. Riding the wind-fire flying kite, he nimbly dodged the attacks of the three. The distance between him and the three of them was only 3 kilometers. To a Zifu disciple, this bit of distance was nothing more than an inch away. Since the Grand Commander had ordered them to block him, they didn't dare to be careless. They defended with all their might, preparing to receive Wang Daoyuan's attack head-on. However, Wang Daoyuan used the wind-fire flying kite to fly a kilometer to the side. Using the flying kite at high speed and forcefully changing direction caused great pressure on the body. Even with the strength of Wang Daoyuan's body, he felt his blood and qi churn. The three of them who were planning to receive his attack head-on, almost broke their waists. Braving the magical attacks of the three, he charged forward. We were prepared to receive the attack head-on, but you turned tail and ran. They immediately retracted their defensive magical techniques and chased after Wang Daoyuan. They casually used some offensive magical techniques, but they were all blocked by the 10 sword shadows. During this delay, Wang Daoyuan had already fled more than 10 kilometers. The three of them chased after him on their flying swords, but unfortunately, they weren't able to keep up with the wind-fire flying kite. At this moment, Wang Daoyuan turned his head to look behind him. Hundreds of kilometers away in the air, an enormous flying warship was chasing after him. This flying warship was extremely fast, definitely much faster than the wind-fire flying kite. If this continued, he wouldn't be able to fly out of Bloodfiend Ridge and would be caught. Because they were too far away, Wang Daoyuan wasn't able to determine the grade of this flying warship. He hadn't revealed anything, and Bloodfiend City wouldn't send out a 4th-rank flying warship to deal with him. The Violet Lightning Demon Punishing Writ should be enough. After advancing for more than 300 kilometers, 2 late-stage Zifu realm cultivators blocked his path. Several Zifu realm cultivators appeared on either side of him as well. This really was an ambush from all sides. Once he was surrounded, he would truly be unable to escape. Chapter 470. Wang Daoyuan didn't panic. Although there seemed to be many opponents, there weren't many who could be of much use. When he escaped, the Blood Demon City's side wasn't on guard. The cultivators blocking the road in front and the 2 flanks were all temporarily deployed to make up the numbers. These people were probably carrying out some other mission nearby and were ordered by their superiors to intercept him. There wouldn't be too many people blocking the road, and there wouldn't be any precise coordination. The best way to deal with them was to break through as quickly as possible and leave them behind. There was no need to care about the 2 flanking cultivators. They relied on flying swords and couldn't keep up with the wind-fire flying kite's speed. The biggest threat was still the flying warship behind him. The flying warship's speed was definitely more than 7,000 miles in 2 hours. It would be able to catch up to him in about an hour. In addition, there were cultivators blocking the road in front of him, delaying his time. The 2 cultivators blocking the road in front of him had to be dealt with as soon as possible. Otherwise, if he was entangled by them, the 2 flanking cultivators would surround him. Even if he used the purple lightning evil punishing token, it would be difficult to escape. Injecting a large amount of spiritual power into the White Tiger Blade, he controlled the wind-fire flying kite and charged towards the 2 people blocking the road. He was already wearing the Bloodfire purple gold armor. 2 late Zifu realm cultivators wouldn't be able to heavily injure him in one blow. He only attacked and didn't defend. Holding the White Tiger Blade in his hand, he charged towards the 2 late Zifu realm cultivators with 10 sword shadows. These 2 people seemed to know about his feint earlier and didn't defend with all their strength. They only took out their defensive magic tools and used their offensive spells at the same time. Soon, the distance between Wang Daoyuan and the 2 people was only a little more than a mile. The 2 people each shot out a fireball and a golden longsword. Wang Daoyuan controlled the wind-fire flying kite and used the flying fire escape to dodge the 2 attacks and instantly appeared in front of them. One of them held a silver shield and the other a fiery red longsword. The silver shield was a defensive magic tool. It was extremely strong and not easy to break through. It would be very difficult to kill him instantly. On the other hand, the one with the fiery red longsword should be a fire attribute cultivator. Fire attribute cultivators were good at offense and not defense. There was still a high chance of killing him. However, he still had to divide them. Wang Daoyuan controlled the 10 sword shadows to attack the shield-wielding cultivator. The shield-wielding cultivator hurriedly infused his spirit energy into the shield and drove the flying sword under his feet to dodge backwards. The sword-wielding cultivator swung his sword towards Wang Daoyuan, sending out a sword light, before holding his sword in front of him to protect himself. Now that he was isolated and helpless, Wang Daoyuan controlled the 10 sword shadows to circle around him and attack him from behind. The white tiger blade in his hand wasn't idle either. He swung his sword and slashed at his head. After the shield-wielding cultivator realized that he had been fooled, he immediately brought out a silver meteor ball and threw it at Wang Daoyuan. Wang Daoyuan did not take the two attacks seriously at all. He was wearing the blood-fire purple-gold armor, so the two sudden attacks could only injure him slightly. Wang Daoyuan's white tiger blade slashed across his neck, and 10 sword shadows pierced through his back. The sword-wielding cultivator's head was separated from his body quickly falling down. The fiery red sword in his hand was also broken into two. The sword light he released slashed at Wang Daoyuan's body, but it only cut through his Taoist robe. There wasn't even a mark left on the blood-fire purple-gold armor. On the other hand, the shield-wielding cultivator's meteor ball still had some power. The meteor ball smashed onto Wang Daoyuan's left shoulder. Wang Daoyuan's body was strong and he was protected by the soft armor, so his defense wasn't broken. However, the impact of the meteor ball still made him feel his chi and blood surging. The shield-wielding cultivator didn't dare to continue forward and retreated towards the south. Wang Daoyuan didn't dare to stay either. He didn't even collect the corpse and continued to drive the wind-fire flying kite towards the north. This time, it only took a few breaths of time to deal with the cultivator blocking the way. Although he was slightly injured, it wasn't a big deal. After that, Wang Daoyuan didn't encounter any more cultivators blocking the way. Those demonic cultivators who were left behind by him all boarded the flying warship and continued to chase after him. After an hour, the flying warship was only 20 or so li away from Wang Daoyuan. The late-stage and peak-stage Zifu realm cultivators on the warship could already attack him with spells and magic tools. Naturally, the offensive magic tools on the flying warship could also hit him. Wang Daoyuan had no choice but to dodge in the air, and his speed was severely affected. If this continued, the flying warship would be able to block his path in just a few hundred breaths of time. At this time, he was still 3,000 li away from the border of Mingsha Plain. If this continued, he wouldn't be able to escape to Mingsha Plain. With no other choice, Wang Daoyuan could only lower his altitude and travel between the mountains. He put on the spirit-restricting silk cloak and used the mountains as cover to play hide-and-seek with the enemy. The flying warship was huge and it wasn't easy to travel between the mountains. It definitely wouldn't dare to enter the mountains. The situation was as Wang Daoyuan expected. The flying warship continued to stay in the air and monitor the situation below. Under the command of the flying warship, the 10+ late-stage and peak-stage Zifu realm cultivators surrounded Wang Daoyuan. With the flying warship monitoring him, Wang Daoyuan found it very hard to hide. He was about to be surrounded by the 10+ Zifu realm demonic cultivators. At this time, a 3,000-meter-long great sword appeared out of thin air and slashed down from the western sky. The demonic cultivators instantly trembled and hurriedly fled on their swords. Wang Daoyuan didn't feel anything. This great sword wasn't aimed at him. However, he still controlled the firestorm kite and dodged to the north. This great sword was aimed at the flying warship. At this time, the flying warship seemed to be fixed in place. Spiritual energy surged on the warship, as though it was using all its strength to dodge, but it couldn't move at all. The people on the warship wanted to flee, but they were powerless as well. The 3,000-meter-long great sword slowly descended. As though it was cutting through tofu, it cut through the flying warship from the bow to the stern without any hindrance. The great sword then disappeared, and the flying warship was neatly divided into two halves. Afterwards, the two halves of the warship didn't fall to the ground. Instead, they turned into fragments that filled the sky. The people on the warship still had expressions of terror on their faces as they turned into minced meat as well. The demonic cultivators who weren't on the warship were all trembling like sieves. Wang Daoyuan sucked in a breath of cold air. This flying warship was at least of the 3rd grade, and there were 5 or 6 late-stage and peak-stage Zifu realm cultivators on it, as well as 10 or 20 Foundation Establishment cultivators. Under this great sword, they were all turned into minced meat. Could be said that this sword was truly frightening. Compared to this, his heaven-cleaving sword was like the fluorescence of rotten grass, but compared to the bright moon in the sky. At this time, a cloud floated over from the west. A young man's voice rang out from within the cloud. "Junior apprentice Brother Wang, I wonder if your myriad arts can break this sword of mine?" Hearing this, Wang Daoyuan was startled. This sentence had a hidden meaning. That year, at Wang Daoyuan's Zifu Grand Ceremony, after defeating the Kuei sword, he had said, "Myriad arts can break this sword." This person's words seemed to be directed at what he had said that year. In that case, this person should be someone from the Tai sword sect. Wang Daoyuan cupped his hands. I wonder which senior from the Tai sword sect came to my rescue? Laughter rang out from within the cloud. Junior apprentice Brother Wang is indeed perceptive. No wonder my master, Taoist Black Thunder, praised you so many times. He said that Dao Yu was a natural sword cultivator seedling, but unfortunately, you came into contact with the Dao of sword cultivators too late. Zifu anomalies aren't swords. Walking the Dao of sword cultivators is always somewhat lacking. The cloud quickly floated over, and Wang Daoyuan saw clearly that there were two youths on the cloud. One of them was the familiar Kuei sword, while the other cultivator was a stranger. This person's appearance was ordinary, and he wore a plain white robe without any ornaments. His hair was tied up with a carefree cloth, and he didn't even wear the most common headdress for cultivators. There wasn't a trace of spiritual energy fluctuation on his body. He didn't look like a cultivator, but more like a scholar of the secular world. A demonic cultivator who had narrowly escaped death cupped his hands. This Jindan Senior, why did you attack us? According to the agreement between my Blood Demon City, the Divine Weapon Pavilion, and the Tai Sword Sect, if a Jindan demonic cultivator doesn't appear, the Jindan cultivators of the two sects won't attack demonic cultivators. Senior, how do you explain your actions? Chapter 471. This Jindan sword cultivator looked at the demonic cultivators without saying a word. It wasn't that he had nothing to say, but rather that Zifu disciples weren't qualified to speak to him. Sword cultivators were powerful in battle, and they looked down on ordinary cultivators of the righteous sections. Demonic cultivators were even less worthy of their attention. Putting on airs in front of demonic cultivators and heretical cultivators was something that all sword cultivators had in common. Even the more approachable cultivators would be affected if they joined a sword cultivation sect. However, someone had to reply. Kuei Sword continued, my senior apprentice brother was discussing the Tao of the sword with junior apprentice brother Wang. That sword strike just now was for junior apprentice brother Wang to see. I'd like to ask, why are you chasing junior apprentice brother Wang? The Zifu disciple had an indignant look on his face. This person is a fugitive from our Bloodfiend city. How did he become a member of the Tai sword sect? Kuei Sword said disdainfully, Dao Yu, think carefully before you speak. This junior apprentice brother Wang is the disciple of Adept Thunderflame of the Divine Weapon Pavilion. You say he's a demonic cultivator? My senior apprentice brother killed you in order to save you. Your Bloodfiend city has dealt with Adept Thunderflame before and you know his temper. If junior apprentice brother Wang were to fall at your hands today, even if a few Jindan cultivators of Bloodfiend city were to die, his fury would most likely not be quelled. Even if things were to end here, if Adept Thunderflame were to learn of this, it would be hard for him to avoid making trouble for you. Adept Thunderflame's power was at the peak of the half-step Yuanying realm. He was also a lightning attribute body refiner, and his lightning techniques countered demonic cultivators. Even half-step Yuanying demonic cultivators weren't a match for him. The demonic cultivators didn't doubt Kuei Sword's words. With a Jindan cultivator present, killing them would only be a matter of a single sword strike. There was no need to lie to them. The demonic cultivator clasped his hands. Thank you, Senior, for your life-saving grace. The cultivator who injured Dao Yu has already died by Senior's sword. Dao Yu Wang, what happened before was all a misunderstanding. You were near that tunnel and we thought you were a fugitive from Bloodfiend City. We accidentally injured Dao Yu. Please forgive us, Dao Yu. This is a small token of appreciation from our Blood Demon City. Dao Yu, please kindly accept it. With that, he took out a storage pouch and handed it to Wang Daoyuan. Wang Daoyuan took the storage pouch and opened it. Inside was a fist-sized piece of high-grade grade 3 Tai gold essence. Although he didn't care about these things now, there was no point in continuing to cause a ruckus. He also didn't want his master to risk his life against the Blood Demon City's golden core cultivators for him, so he chose to keep the peace. When the fiendish cultivator saw him accept the Grand Unity Essence Gold, a smile appeared on his face. This was what he used to refine his natal Dharma artifact. At this moment he had no choice but to take it out to settle this matter. Although he felt some heartache, if this matter could be resolved without bringing too much trouble to Blood Demon City, the higher-ups would definitely compensate him. He cupped his hands towards the golden core sword cultivator and said, Senior, if there is nothing else, we will take our leave. The golden core sword cultivator did not say anything and only nodded. The crowd of fiendish cultivators felt as if they had been pardoned and left with gratitude. Wang Daoyuan cupped his hands towards the golden core sword cultivator and said, Senior, thank you for your help. Otherwise, I'm afraid it would have been very difficult for me to leave alive today. The golden core sword cultivator waved his hand and said, "No need to be so polite. Taoist Lei Yen and my master Taoist Shen Lei address each other as equals. You and I are also of the same generation. With junior brother's talent, forming a golden core is only a matter of 100 years. My name is Swordless. You can just call me senior brother Swordless." Hearing Swordless words, Wang Daoyuan was stunned. The person in front of him was the famous Swordless Taoist, a legendary figure among sword cultivators. He was the only golden core cultivator in Beiyuan Xiuxin to have the title of Taoist. At present, in Beiyuan Xiuxin, the highest cultivation level was only half-step Yuanying. Golden core cultivators were already the top fighting force, and the title of Taoist was not as strict as before. Even so, the title of Taoist was not something that just anyone could get. There were no sects that specifically gave golden core cultivators a title. The titles of Taoist and loose cultivators were either given by themselves or called by others. The next step was to see if they could be recognized. Once he had a title, the other cultivators would call him that. That would mean that he was recognized by everyone. If other cultivators did not take the title seriously, then it was not recognized and the title was naturally invalid. Some experts might have multiple titles and in the end it would depend on which title was called more loudly. At present, Golden Core late stage and above cultivators all had the title of Taoist. Among Golden Core middle stage cultivators, very few had the title of Taoist. For example, the Netherworld sect master was also at Golden Core middle stage, but he did not have a title. Any cultivator with a title was recognized as having the strength of a Golden Core late stage. This swordless Taoist was only at Golden Core early stage, and it had only been 100 years since he formed his Golden Core. The title of Swordless Taoist was recognized by even the four top powers. His name was Swordless and he indeed did not have a sword. Sword cultivators had to nurture their life-bound flying swords, and when he had just entered the Violet Palace realm, he had indeed sacrificially refined his life-bound magic tool. However, not long after he had sacrificially refined it, he had become one with the sword. After that, he felt that his life-bound flying sword's growth was too slow, and he had directly abandoned it. Although he did not have a sword, he could casually use sword cultivator spells. The sword strike that had shattered the flying warship had been executed with his bare hands. Swordless Taoist was publicly recognized as the #1 sword cultivator genius in Beiyuan Xiuxin. Wang Daoyuan asked with a face full of surprise, "You are Swordless Taoist?" Swordless Taoist replied with a question, "I'm only at Golden Core early stage. How can someone impersonate me? Junior Martial Brother once said that 10,000 techniques can break a sword strike. I wonder if Junior Martial Brother can break my sword strike with 10,000 techniques?" Wang Daoyuan was not discouraged and replied, "I simply cannot understand Senior Martial Brother's sword strike, and I have no idea how to break it. However, when I reach Golden Core early stage, I may not necessarily be unable to defeat Senior Martial Brother's sword strike." Swordless Taoist laughed, "Master's words are indeed correct. Junior Martial Brother is good sword cultivation material. However, in my opinion, Daoyu may not necessarily be unable to shine brightly on the path of sword cultivation. Although the Violet Palace anomaly is important, it is not indispensable. I have not even used my life-bound flying sword, nor have I used my Violet Palace resonance. I am still a sword cultivator." Wang Daoyuan nodded. "Sword cultivation, body cultivation and magic cultivation, in my opinion, they are all just one path of cultivation. As long as one has the Tao in one's heart, it makes no difference which path one walks." Swordless Taoist nodded. "Cultivators of my generation cultivate the Tao. If one has the Tao in one's heart, so what if one is a sword cultivator or not? I only understood this after forming my Golden Core. Junior Martial Brother, you are only at the middle stage of the Violet Palace realm, yet you were able to comprehend it. Your talent is indeed extraordinary." Wang Daoyuan cupped his hands. "Senior Martial Brother, you flatter me. I wonder how Senior Martial Brother came to this place by chance?" Kuei Sword interrupted, "You should thank me for this. Last time you saved me. You let me know that in the southern wasteland I can no longer be as straightforward as before. I was at the 10,000 Blades Mountain, learning how to pretend to be a devil cultivator. After learning it, I have been lurking in the outskirts of the Blood Demon Ridge. Today I happened to be traveling nearby and saw that the Blood Demon army was making a big move, so I went closer to watch. I recognized your flying magic artifact, and sent a message to the sect asking for help. Senior Martial Brother Swordless happened to be patrolling the southern wasteland and came nearby, so I asked him to come help. Right, the Blood Demon army did not see through your true identity at all, and thought that you were a devil cultivator. Then why are they chasing after you? Wang Daoyuan laughed. I have been in the Blood Demon City for more than 10 years and caused some trouble in the city, and was targeted by the Blood Demon Army. When I was escaping, I was discovered by the Blood Demon Army members, which caused them to chase after me. As soon as these words were said, even Swordless Taoist had a surprised look on his face, while Kuei Sword's face fell. I thought that being able to hide from ordinary devil cultivators was already not easy. I did not expect that Junior Martial Brother Wang could actually sneak into the Blood Demon City, and not reveal your identity while being chased by a group of devil cultivators. It seems that my ability to conceal my identity is still far from Junior Martial Brothers. Chapter 472. Wang Daoyuan smiled. Senior Brother Kuei, you don't have to be like this. Sword cultivators are mostly straightforward and not good at disguising. What sword cultivators need to care about is the way of the sword, not small tricks like disguising. Hearing this, Kuei Sword's mood improved a lot. He smiled. Junior Brother Wang really knows how to talk. If it was Master or Senior Brother Swordless, they might have reprimanded me for a long time. However, we're brothers and sisters. The difficulty of saving you this time is much higher than last time. I asked Senior Brother for help, so the favor of saving me is cancelled out. You still owe Senior Brother Swordless a favor. Wang Daoyuan sighed in his heart. Although Master Xuanlei's strength was not as good as his master's, his ability to teach disciples was really good. To be able to teach a sword genius like Master Swordless and teach a rash person like Kuei Sword to be so good at settling accounts. He looked at Kuei Sword helplessly and smiled. I say, you're a proper sword cultivator, why are you always thinking about settling accounts? Master Swordless smiled. Junior Brother Kuei Sword is indeed different from before. However, you're better now. I'm patrolling the southern wasteland and have to report back to the sect. Junior Brother Wang, do you have time to visit Tai Sword Sect? Wang Daoyuan cupped his hands. I might have to disappoint Senior Brother Swordless. I still have matters to attend to in Mingxia Plains. When I'm free, I'll visit Tai Sword Sect. Master Swordless waved his hand. No matter, there'll be plenty of opportunities in the future. Kuei Sword hurriedly said, Senior Brother, you should go back first. I'll train in the southern wasteland for a while. Swordless Sage glanced at him and said, in your dreams. Before I came out, Master had instructed me to bring you back while I was at it. You've been traveling for more than 20 years and you don't know how to go back and see Master. Master Swordless took the dejected Kuei Sword and headed towards the northwest. Wang Daoyuan also rode the windfire flying kite and headed towards the north. His identity had been exposed, so he had to leave as soon as possible. Although the Blood Demon Army did not dare to attack him again, the loose cultivators among the demonic cultivators were not afraid of anything. Being entangled by a group of loose cultivators was also a big problem. After leaving the Blood Demon Ridge and returning to Mingxia Plains, Wang Daoyuan did not go anywhere else. After sending a message to his master, Lei Yanjinren, that he was safe, he went to Huangjiaga Mountain. Previously he had already dug a hole here. Now he could go in and try to condense the earth attribute pseudo-spiritual fire. In the space of the spiritual pearl, the wood attribute pseudo-spiritual fire was already very stable, and the flame was also half an inch tall. The origin of spiritual fire was also slightly bigger than a sesame seed. When the spiritual fire's origin grew to the size of a mung bean, it would be a true spiritual fire. After all, the origin of the life spirit flame was only the size of a soybean. However, it would probably take a lot of time to grow to that point. Back then, when perfected Lord Hundred Spirits cultivated the pseudo-spiritual fire into a spiritual fire, he was at the late stage of the Golden Core realm and had the help of the Red-Winged Crow. Even so, it still took 200 years. Although the peach tree sapling was miraculous, judging from the fluctuations of spiritual energy, it was only a third-rank upper grade. Since he had to nurture the life spiritual fire and the pseudo-spiritual fire at the same time, his speed would definitely be slower than true Monarch 100 Spirits. To nurture a true spiritual fire, it was not impossible to spend 400 to 500 years. However, with the time acceleration of the spirit orb space, even if it took 1,000 years, it would not be a big deal. After Chiyu ate the eggshell, its growth speed increased greatly, and it was now the size of a pigeon. The feathers on its body were as black as ink, with faint fiery red patterns. The feathers on its wings were pure gold. However, it had yet to condense a natal true fire or grow a natal tail feather. It seemed like it was still too young. With a flap of its wings, it brought with it a fire attribute spiritual energy. It should not take much time to condense its own natal true fire if it stayed beside the Scarlet Sun true fire all day. When it condensed a natal true fire in the future, he could ask it for help when he condensed the fire attribute pseudo-spiritual fire. The speed might be faster. It had been more than 2 years since he obtained the metal attribute spiritual fire. The space of the spirit orb had increased by another 10%, which was 1/10 of an acre. The newly added land was at the edge of the space of the spirit orb. It was only a small addition and was not worth sowing. Whatever was planted at the side he would make up for it. Wang Daoyuan entered the cave in the small valley of Huangjiagu Mountain and sealed the entrance. He stopped more than 40,000 feet from the ground in the cave and drew out a wisp of dust-returning flame from the space of the spirit orb and placed it on the stone wall. After that, he controlled the spiritual fire to burn the surrounding stone walls. What he needed to control was to leave stone pillars behind when the dust-returning flame burned the stone walls to prevent the rock layer above from collapsing. In every acre he left 5 stone pillars with a diameter of 3 feet. The strength of the rocks here was extremely high. There was no problem for the stone pillars to support the rocks above. He did not need to care about the rest. Burning the stone walls was the dust-returning flame's specialty. Now he no longer drew out any spiritual energy from the flames and let the dust-returning flame burn freely. A month later, the dust-returning flame burned an underground cave that was more than 100 feet tall and 50 to 60 acres in size. The dust-returning flame was still burning around the cave. The spiritual energy produced by the burning of the rock layer was not completely absorbed by the dust-returning flame. Some of it was emitted. The concentration of spiritual energy in this underground cave had already reached the level of superior grade rank 4. With the experience of condensing the wood attribute pseudo-spiritual fire, he knew how much spiritual fire essence was needed to stabilize the pseudo-spiritual fire. The spiritual fire essence in these flames was more than enough to form the pseudo-spiritual fire. His spirit consciousness entered the space of the spirit pearl and probed into the dust-returning flame. The spiritual fire essence of the dust-returning flame was the size of a soybean. 1/10 of the essence of the dust-returning flame was cut off. After this 1/10 of the essence was separated, a portion of it was dissipated. Coupled with the fact that it had shrunk to protect itself, it was only the size of a sesame seed. It was still dissipating. If it was left alone, it would dissipate completely in a few dozen breaths. Wang Daoyuan merged the sesame-sized earthen yellow flame into the blazing earthen yellow flames on the rock wall. This time he did not need to inject his own spiritual energy to nurture the embryonic form of the pseudo-spiritual fire. The fire seed would automatically absorb the essence of the surrounding flames to stabilize itself. What Wang Daoyuan wanted to do was very simple. The earthen yellow flames burned everywhere. If they were too far away, it would not be convenient for the fire seed to absorb the essence. He only needed to draw the flame essence from other places to the fire seed. A day later, the pseudo-spiritual fire stabilized and could automatically absorb the dissipating spiritual energy to grow. At this moment, the entire pseudo-spiritual fire was only 1/3 of an inch tall. The fire seed inside was still the size of a sesame seed. However, it was much more stable than before and would not dissipate casually. In this underground cave, the earth spirit energy was extremely rich. There was no need to care about it and let it grow on its own. Wang Daoyuan pulled out all the dust-returning flame essence that was still burning fiercely on the surrounding rock walls. He could not let it continue to burn freely. Otherwise, the upper layer of rock would easily collapse. The massive amount of spiritual fire essence that was absorbed was naturally injected into the pseudo-spiritual fire. The pseudo-spiritual fire absorbed all the flame essence. However, after absorbing the massive amount of spiritual fire essence, the pseudo-spiritual fire did not change much. Only the sesame-sized fire seed became more stable. Wang Daoyuan did not put the pseudo-spiritual fire into the space of the spirit pearl. Instead, he placed it on the rock wall. He was not worried about the flames burning everywhere. The flames on the pseudo-spiritual fire were very stable as long as they were not separated from the fire seed. Whether it was the spiritual fire or the pseudo-spiritual fire, as long as the fire seed was there, it would not burn everywhere. If the outer flames absorbed spiritual energy and grew a little stronger, the essence would be drawn away by the fire seed. A rootless fire that was separated from the fire seed would be extinguished at the slightest breeze and would not cause too much trouble. This was also the restriction of the world's laws on spiritual fire. Otherwise, the entire cultivation world would be burned down if the spiritual fire burned everywhere. Chapter 473. After condensing the pseudo-spiritual fire of the returning dust flame, Wang Daoyuan did not take the risk to dig up lava and continued to condense the fire attribute pseudo-spiritual fire. There were less than 20 years left in the 30-year agreement with Flying Sand Wanderer. Even if he condensed the pseudo-spiritual fire, he would not be able to refine the spiritual fire and increase his strength. In the remaining 20 years, it would be better to increase his cultivation. When the true devil blood lotus matured, all kinds of demonic cultivators would come to fight for it, and even ferocious beasts would be attracted. If he wanted to help Flying Sand Wanderer obtain the true devil blood lotus, he would definitely be besieged by all kinds of forces. In this kind of situation, even staying alive would be very difficult. If he wanted to pass this hurdle, he would have to increase his strength as much as possible. His cultivation had been in the middle stage of the Zifu realm for more than 10 years, and there were still 20 years left. He would find time to refine some purple rhythm pills, and use the returning dust flame to ignite rocks to obtain pure earth attribute spiritual energy. He had 5 spiritual power seeds, and his cultivation speed was comparable to that of a double spiritual root cultivator with an 8-inch main spiritual root. With all the resources he could get, breaking through to the late stage of the Zifu realm in 20 years was not a big problem. Before that, he needed to change the metal attribute spiritual power seed. The original metal attribute spiritual power seed was also metal attribute spiritual power. Wang Daoyuan directly turned it into metal attribute spiritual power, and then poured it into the white tiger blade. This spiritual power contained killing intent, which could be used to nurture the white tiger blade. After that, he extracted the spiritual fire essence from the Tai golden flame and condensed the metal attribute spiritual power seed. 3 days later, the metal attribute spiritual power seed was formed. After being refined by the spiritual power seed, the metal attribute spiritual power contained the killing intent of the Tai golden flame. When using ordinary metal attribute spells, the power increased by 30%, and the ability to break through defenses increased even more. Metal-type spells were much more powerful when used against defensive spells and defensive artifacts. The 5 elemental spiritual power seeds did not need to be changed anymore, and only needed to be nurtured. However, before fusing with the spiritual fire, it was best to make the 5 spiritual power seeds the same size. He refined all the mature purple rhythm dragon ginseng into purple rhythm pills. After that, he went into seclusion in the underground cave of the Huangjiagu Mountain. The Huangjiagu Mountain was not far from the Divine Weapon Pavilion's Treasure Cauldron Mountain, only about 10,000 miles. Wang Daoyuan was in constant contact with Wang Daoyin to understand the situation of his family. On the other hand, everything was normal in the family. Occasionally there would be rank 3 monster beasts that would invade the family business, but with the 12th uncle there was no loss. The situation in the Zhao Kingdom remained the same. The Song Kingdom in the south was restless, so the Thousand Spirits sect was unable to do anything. The small skirmishes between the Cruel Sun Palace and the Wei Nation had never stopped. The Ghost sect was held back by the affairs of Shanbei. The conflict between the half-demon tribes and the bloodthirsty ash wolves became more and more intense after Wang Daoyuan stirred things up. Zhou Wan also carried out Wang Daoyuan's strategy, fanning the flames whenever she had nothing to do. Both sides often had minor conflicts, and casualties occurred from time to time. The relationship between the half-demons and the demons was tense in the entire northern mountains. The Ghost sect wanted to meddle in the affairs of Shanbei at this time. They wanted to seize the opportunity to seize some territory and gain a firm foothold in Shanbei. The 3 major sects each had their own plans, so there were no more conflicts. Wang Daoyuan did not dare to return to the family at this time. Otherwise, he would be assigned a mission by the Ghost sect, and it would be difficult for him to come out again. He might even delay the matter of the true demonic blood lotus. It was not worth delaying the refining of his natal magic weapon for the Ghost sect. 15 years later, Wang Daoyuan sat cross-legged in a cave thousands of feet under the Huangjiagu Mountain. At this time his body was emitting intense spiritual power fluctuations, and a dazzling purple light flashed between his eyebrows, illuminating the entire underground cave. 15 minutes later, the purple light suddenly burst out like a purple sun, making people not dare to look at it directly. The spiritual power fluctuations on Wang Daoyuan's body had also increased significantly. After breaking through the middle stage of the Purple Mansion realm, he had successfully broken through to the late stage of the Purple Mansion realm. This cultivation speed was not inferior to the Heaven spiritual root. The underground cave was now thousands of acres in size. As for the rocks, they were all burned by Wang Daoyuan with the dust returning flame. He obtained a large amount of pure fire attribute spiritual power. In addition to using it for cultivation, the rest was used to nurture the pseudo-spiritual fire. In these years, the earth attribute pseudo-spiritual fire had also improved a lot. The fire seed was already half the size of a grain of wheat. Of course, the growth speed could not be compared with the wood attribute pseudo-spiritual fire. With the peach tree sapling continuously providing wood attribute spiritual power, the fire seed of the wood attribute pseudo-spiritual fire was already very close to the size of a mung bean. In a few years, it would almost become a real spiritual fire. The 5 spiritual veins in the spiritual pearl space had long broken through to the 3rd rank. Now they were all middle grade rank 3 spiritual veins. The area of the spiritual field had also increased by 1 acre. Now the spiritual pearl space had 41 acres of spiritual field. The most gratifying change was the red-feathered crow. This guy's wingspan was now more than 3 feet. It was already an adult red-feathered crow, and its cultivation had also reached the 3rd rank lower grade. When a demonic beast reached the 3rd rank, its body would generally not be too big, because the strength of a 3rd rank demonic beast mainly depended on its innate spells. Except for those demonic beasts whose innate spells relied on the physical body, the expansion of the physical body did not increase the strength much. On the contrary, because the body was too big, it was not good for hiding and also reduced flexibility. Therefore, most 3rd rank demonic beasts were more used to shrinking their bodies. Now, the red-feathered crow had already condensed its natal true fire, which was no different from the scarlet sun true fire. Unfortunately, its natal feather had not yet grown out. Wang Daoyuan had been in seclusion underground and did not let him go out to fight. The spiritual pearl space was extremely narrow, and it could not be used at all. Therefore Wang Daoyuan did not know what other innate spells it had besides playing with fire. In the past 10 years there were no problems with the family. 5th great-uncle and 12th uncle had both broken through to the middle stage of the Purple Mansion realm, and the 3 major sects were still peaceful. After breaking through, Wang Daoyuan did not plan to go out. Instead, he continued to stay in the cave and nurture the 2 natal magic artifacts. His cultivation had just broken through to the late stage of the Purple Mansion realm. If he continued to cultivate, it would not be possible for his cultivation to improve significantly in a short period of time. To improve his strength, he could only work on the White Tiger Blade and the Black Tortoise Shield. The Black Tortoise Shield had almost no offensive power. As a defensive magic artifact, there was no need to specially comprehend the Black Tortoise's charm, but at least it had to be refined to the point where it was telepathic. When fighting for the true demonic Blood Lotus, there would be more than 1 or 2 opponents. It was very likely that he would have to face a large group of demonic cultivators and ferocious beasts. At that time, a battle of attrition would be unavoidable. It was inevitable that his divine sense would be overdrawn, and the recovery of his divine sense would be relatively slow. He had to ensure that after his divine sense was overdrawn, he still had strong offensive and defensive abilities to buy time for his divine sense to recover. It was very important to refine the Black Tortoise Shield to the point where it was telepathic. Of course, he could not neglect the White Tiger Blade. Before, he did not think that sword cultivators were very strong. After all, he could easily defeat most sword cultivators of the same level. After seeing the swordless spiritual master's sword, he knew the strength of sword cultivators. All these years he had been thinking about that sword. At that time he did not understand, but now he had a rough idea. The swordless spiritual master had used his sword intent and the comprehension of becoming one with the sword to slash out that sword. However, he could not see what the swordless spiritual master's sword intent was. After all, that sword was not aimed at him, so he could not feel its power. With about 4 years left, it was impossible for him to reach the state of becoming one with the sword, but he could improve on his sword intent. Also, he had a lot of Heaven Ferocious Gold and Grand Unity Essence Gold. He could extract their essence and smelt it into the White Tiger Blade. The current White Tiger Blade was still a middle-grade Tier 3 magic artifact. Just relying on spiritual power to nourish it, it was indeed possible to make the life-bound magic artifact advance, but it would take too much time. Using the method of smelting higher-tiered phase would save a lot of time. After the White Tiger Blade advanced, the power of the sword cultivator's magic arts would also increase by a level. 3.5 years later, Wang Daoyuan was nurturing the White Tiger Blade. He received a message from Flying Sand Wanderer, asking to meet him in the small valley of the Yellow Jagged Mountain to discuss the matter of the true demonic Blood Lotus. Chapter 474. There was still half a year left before the 30-year agreement. The Flying Sand Vagabond only had a rough estimate of when the true demonic Blood Lotus would bloom, so it was reasonable for him to go half a year earlier. Wang Daoyuan did not waste these 3.5 years. He used 2 years to refine the Black Tortoise Shield until it was connected with his mind. After that, he spent half a year to refine the White Tiger blade with the 3rd level upper grade Sky Demon Gold and Extreme Unity Gold, upgrading the White Tiger blade to a 3rd level upper grade magic weapon. The last year was used to comprehend the White Tiger sword intent. However, the White Tiger sword intent was focused on killing, so it was hard to make any progress in seclusion. The White Tiger sword intent did not make much progress, but the Sword Shadow Divine Light technique had a great breakthrough. Now, each Sword Shadow's lethality was equivalent to 1/5 of the White Tiger blade's full power attack. When fighting, the 10 Sword Shadows plus the White Tiger blade's main body would have 3 times the lethality. Wang Daoyuan tested the power of the White Tiger blade. A casual sword ray was 5 times more powerful than a 3rd level upper grade 5 elements divine sword technique talisman. If he used the myriad sword technique and condensed the sword shadows, the power would increase by 10 times. The full power attack of the flying sword was 50 times more powerful than the 5 elements divine sword technique. Adding the full power attack of the 10 sword shadows, it was equivalent to 155 elements divine sword techniques attacking the same place at the same time. Moreover, this was only the direct lethality. If the opponent had an extremely strong defensive magic weapon or spell, the 5 elements divine sword technique would have a hard time breaking through the defense. However, the White Tiger blade's ability to break through defenses was extremely strong. Adding the killing intent of the metal element spiritual power, its lethality to opponents with strong defenses was something that ordinary spells could not compare with. If he used the White Tiger blade to fight, he would also need to add his physical strength. These attacks did not need to accumulate spiritual power and could be used in an instant. Wang Daoyuan's current physical strength was comparable to the spells of ordinary middle-stage Zifu realm cultivators. With his current strength, he would not be weaker than most peak-stage Zifu realm cultivators if he only used the White Tiger blade in his physical strength. Although it was a pity that he could not continue to comprehend the White Tiger sword intent, his strength was enough. In the depths of the southern wasteland, as long as he did not encounter golden core stage cultivators or talisman treasures, he could do anything he wanted. After replying to Flying Sand Wanderer, he would wait for him in the small valley of the Huang Jagged Mountain. Wang Daoyuan packed up and left the underground cave, reaching the top of the tunnel. There were still several hundred feet of rock layers above him, so there was no need to break through them. He could just use Earth Escape. After waiting for more than 2 hours, Loose Cultivator Flying Sand arrived. The moment he saw Wang Daoyuan's cultivation breakthrough, he said in astonishment, "Daoyu's cultivation speed is truly astonishing. That year when we fought, he was only at the middle Zifu stage. Now he's already at the late Zifu stage. It seems that Daoyu was not boasting back then. Forming a gold core is really not worth mentioning to you. How strong is Daoyu now? Can you reveal a bit? Our cooperation this time is extremely dangerous. It'll be easier for us to cooperate if we know the basics." Wang Daoyuan didn't go into detail. He just smiled and said, "If Daoyu's strength hadn't improved by leaps and bounds in the past 30 years, I wouldn't have needed to use the 5 elements Devil Suppression Seal to take down Daoyu." Loose Cultivator Flying Sand nodded satisfactorily. Wang Daoyuan's strength had exceeded his expectations. When they fought in the past, Wang Daoyuan could rely on the 5 elements Devil Suppression Seal to fight him 40 to 60%. Although this strength was strong, it couldn't be sustained. With one strike, there was indeed a chance to kill a peak Zifu disciple. After this strike, he wouldn't have the strength to fight anymore. This trip was extremely dangerous. It wasn't enough to only rely on his ultimate move to fight a peak Zifu disciple. Now, without using his ultimate move, he could defeat a peak Zifu disciple. If he used his ultimate move again, he might be able to kill a peak Zifu disciple. He asked again, "May I ask if Daoyu is ready? When can you depart?" Wang Daoyuan replied, "I can depart at any time. I just don't know where this true Devil Blood Lotus is. Is it the Blood Devil Ridge or the Devil Burial Mountain?" Loose Cultivator Flying Sand was startled. It seems that Daoyu hasn't been idle these past 30 years. The true Devil Blood Lotus grows in the middle of the Devil Burial Mountain. Back then, I traveled there for a period of time. I was chased by devil cultivators, so I hid in an underground cave. By chance, I discovered this true Devil Blood Lotus. Later, I searched through many ancient books and determined its approximate maturity. However, does Daoyu have a method to disguise himself as a devil cultivator? If we go to the Devil Burial Mountain like this, I'm afraid we'll be besieged by devil cultivators on the way. Wang Daoyuan clenched his right fist and punched out. The fist wind hit the stone wall and left a half-inch deep fist mark. Soon after, he took out a bone sword and asked, "Daoyu, do I look like a devil cultivator or a righteous cultivator?" Loose cultivator Flying Sand sucked in a breath of cold air and said, Daoyu has such a powerful body. Without using spiritual energy, you already have such powerful strength. Coupled with this bone sword, ordinary devil cultivators really can't see through you. After saying this, Loose cultivator Flying Sand took out a blood-red pill and swallowed it. A moment later, his chi and blood fluctuations rapidly increased, and he looked about the same as ordinary devil cultivators. Soon after, he took out a white bone wheel and said, I've already dealt with the matters at home. We can set off now. Wang Daoyuan wore the blood-fire purple gold armor and the forbidden spirit silk cloak. He rode the bone sword and followed Loose cultivator Flying Sand to the southeast. Directly south was the Blood Demon Ridge. There were many devil cultivators. If they directly went through the ridge, they might encounter a lot of trouble, so it was better to take a detour. Although it would take a detour of tens of thousands of miles, it was not a big deal for the two of them. After entering the devil cultivators' territory, they might encounter danger at any time, so they couldn't be in a hurry. Once they consumed too much spiritual energy, they might encounter a surprise attack and die. After traveling for more than 10,000 miles, they would find a safe place to recover their spiritual energy. They didn't encounter any trouble along the way. After 2 days, they bypassed the Blood Demon Ridge and arrived at the northernmost part of the Devil Burial Mountain. The Devil Burial Mountain ran from north to south, with a maximum length of more than 20,000 miles and a width of more than 3,000 miles from east to west. There was a giant fourth-rank low-grade water spirit vein in the mountain. Legend has it that when the ancient devil race invaded, many devil corpses were thrown here. After a long time they turned into a mountain range. Just by looking at the name, one would think that it was a barren place where demons and devils ran rampant. But after arriving here, they realized that the Devil Burial Mountain did not live up to its name. Not only was it not a barren place, but it was also a place with beautiful scenery. Because of the water spirit vein, there were many rivers and lakes. Every mountain peak was also lush with vegetation. Everywhere was a scene of exuberant vitality. In a place like this, there were naturally many ferocious beasts. Devil cultivators relied on plundering to cultivate, especially those of the blood demon lineage. They had a great need for the blood of ferocious beasts. Therefore, the Devil Burial Mountain had become a hunting ground for the blood demon lineage. The mountain was tall, but it couldn't be compared to the Blood Demon Ridge. Wang Daoyuan and the Flying Sand Wanderer came for the true demonic blood lotus, so they weren't interested in the ferocious beasts. The two of them went straight for the center of the Devil Burial Mountain. On the way, they encountered devil cultivators hunting ferocious beasts and did their best to avoid them. Although they didn't want to look for trouble, trouble came knocking on their door. After entering 4,000 li into the Blood Demon Mountain, there were 3 Violet Palace Realm devil cultivators in front of them. They were currently surrounding a black tiger-type ferocious beast. Among the 3 devil cultivators, 2 were at the peak of the Violet Palace Realm, and 1 was at the late stage. This ferocious beast was also a high-grade 3rd-rank ferocious beast. Its strength was extraordinary. Under the joint attack of the 3, it was still able to continuously counterattack. One of the 3 devil cultivators took out a ring with a bell attached. It looked a bit like a dog's collar. When the black tiger saw the collar, it stopped fighting with the 3 devil cultivators. It turned around and ran towards Wang Daoyuan and the Flying Sand Wanderer. The cultivator holding the collar shouted to the 2, "You 2 stop this vile beast. After this I'll give you something." The 2 of them didn't put a high-grade 3rd-rank ferocious beast in their eyes. They also didn't want to get involved in this matter, so they went east to hide. The black tiger's speed wasn't slow. In a few dozen breaths of time, it escaped into the mountain forest. The 3 devil cultivators didn't dare to chase after it. Instead, they blocked Wang Daoyuan and the Flying Sand Wanderer. The cultivator holding the collar said with bad intentions, "I told you to stop the black tiger. Are your ears stuffed with donkey hair?" The cooked duck flew away. "If you 2 don't compensate us for our losses, don't even think about leaving." Chapter 475. The demonic cultivators of the blood demon lineage used the blood essence of fierce beasts to cultivate all year round, so it was hard to avoid being attacked by baleful aura and resentment. Therefore, most of the demonic cultivators were disagreeable people. The 3 people in front of him were the type commonly seen among the demonic cultivators. If they were slightly displeased, they would vent their anger on others. Wang Daoyuan did not tolerate their bad habits. "Daring to cause trouble in front of me, unless you're stronger than me, you'll die." He asked Flying Sand Wanderer, "Is it convenient for you to make a move?" Flying Sand Wanderer did not say anything, only shaking his head. It seemed that his pill was still not strong enough. If he were to make a move, he would easily be exposed. Wang Daoyuan laughed, "Then leave these 3 idiots to me." Saying so, he pointed at the 3 people and said, "Who wants to die first?" The Peak Zifu realm cultivator holding the collar said to a young cultivator, "We really met someone who doesn't know the immensity of heaven and earth. This kid seems to have just entered the late stage of the Zifu realm. Third brother, your cultivation is the same as his, you deal with him." The young cultivator laughed disdainfully, flying his sword to attack Wang Daoyuan. This guy was also a hothead and did not have a defensive magic tool. He used a defensive technique and flew over on his sword. When the 2 people were less than 3 li apart, Wang Daoyuan's hands flickered with silver light. Then 2 huge silvery arm phantoms appeared beside the young cultivator, grabbing him. The young cultivator had just entered the late stage of the Zifu realm, and his strength was not that great. He struggled with all his might, but found that he was powerless to resist. This was a body cultivation technique that was widely spread, called Mountain Splitter, a low-grade 4th-rank technique. Tu Yuming knew this technique, so did his clone. Wang Daoyuan was about to slap him to death, but Flying Sand Wanderer hurriedly stopped him. "Leave him alive, maybe he'll come in handy." Thinking about it, the true devil blood lotus was very likely related to blood. Maybe sacrificing his blood essence would have some effect. The 2 Peak Zifu realm cultivators also went up to rescue him. Wang Daoyuan used one of his arm phantoms to choke his neck, and the other phantoms to slap him unconscious, dragging him to his side. Flying Sand Wanderer took out the yellow sand gourd, taking the young cultivator inside. The cultivator with the collar said angrily, "Release my third brother immediately, or I'll make you wish you were dead." Wang Daoyuan was too lazy to bother with him and took out the white tiger blade. The cultivator holding the necklace shook the necklace in his hand, and the bell on it let out an ear-piercing sound. It seemed to have the effect of attacking the soul. Moreover, the sound wave attack was directional, so the cultivators around him were not affected at all. However, Zifu disciples were protected by their Zifu mansions, and their souls were transformed into divine souls. This sort of attack was capable of instantly annihilating a large number of Foundation establishment cultivators, but it was far from effective against Zifu disciples. Only Zifu disciples would feel a bit uncomfortable, and their divine sense would be affected. Next, the bell released 2 short swords formed from divine sense, respectively attacking Wang Daoyuan and Flying Sand Wanderer. This short sword was only 3 inches long and was formed by the power of divine sense. It could not be seen with the naked eye and could only be probed with the power of divine sense. With the interference of the sound wave attack of the bell, the divine sense of an ordinary Zifu realm cultivator would be completely suppressed and be unable to investigate at all. This magic tool could also be considered a kind of magic tool for sound cultivators. It used the sound wave attack to interfere with the divine sense, and used the divine sense to attack and kill the enemy. Unfortunately, Wang Daoyuan's divine sense was extremely strong, surpassing that of ordinary Peak Zifu realm cultivators. Needless to say, Flying Sand Wanderer had been running rampant in Mingsha Plain for hundreds of years and had seen all kinds of tricks. This little trick was not enough to take him down. Wang Daoyuan used the myriad sword art and repeatedly waved the white tiger blade, slashing out one long sword image after another. The divine sense dagger that had been aimed at him completely disappeared after cutting off the 3 long sword phantoms. Flying Sand Wanderer also took out the thick earth devil suppressing seal and released a large seal afterimage to break the divine sense short sword. Of the long sword afterimages that Wang Daoyuan brandished, 2 more slashed towards the cultivator holding the necklace. The cultivator next to him took out a huge earthen yellow shield. After activating it, an even bigger shield afterimage appeared on the shield. When the 2 long sword afterimages hit the shield afterimages, they immediately dissipated. The shield afterimages became a lot dimmer, but the shield itself was not damaged at all. These 2 people's cooperation was very tight. One used a sound cultivator's magic tool to attack, while the other used a shield to defend. Ordinary Peak Zifu realm cultivators really had no way to deal with them. That devil cultivator activated the bell again, while Wang Daoyuan took out the soul extinguishing bell. The soul extinguishing bell was a high-grade second-tier magic tool. It was almost useless against Zifu realm cultivators, but its defensive ability against sound wave attacks was still pretty good. Under the activation of his divine sense, Wang Daoyuan's body was wrapped in a thick layer of golden light. The effect was pretty good, and the power of the sound wave attack was weakened by more than half. He used the sword shadow divine light technique, and 10 sword afterimages with a murderous aura revolved around him. Soon after, A black fog that covered an area of 20 kilometers appeared out of nowhere, enveloping the four people. The demon burial mountain had a fourth-tier water-type spirit vein, and the water-type spirit chi was extremely dense. Using the cloud mist escape here, the range of the cloud and fog was far greater than usual. Moreover, this cloud and fog carried water-type spirit energy that could attack the divine sense. Zifu realm cultivators had their Zifu to protect their divine sense, so attacking the divine sense was somewhat difficult. However, eroding the power of the divine sense and restricting the detection of divine sense was still very easy. The other three immediately cast defensive spells, isolating the black fog outside. He leaped into the air and attacked the two devil cultivators. The two devil cultivators were less than 5 kilometers away from him, and they arrived in an instant. The cultivator holding the collar activated the bell again and shot out a divine sense dagger. The cultivator holding the shield immediately blocked in front, preparing to take Wang Daoyuan's attack head-on. Wang Daoyuan condensed the soul-severing blade and resisted. The divine sense dagger and the soul-severing blade were equal in power, and both disappeared. Wang Daoyuan also arrived beside the two and used all his strength to slash at the shield. The 10 sword afterimages and the white tiger blade slashed at the same time, and an ear-piercing sound of metal clashing rang out. The black fog dissipated, and the two devil cultivators' faces were filled with fear. Soon after, the shield phantom shattered. Immediately after, the shield broke into two halves, and the two devil cultivators were cut in half at the waist. They didn't even have time to make a sound before the sword chi invaded their bodies, and their internal organs were all shattered. The two people and their shields fell to the ground, leaving behind a large blood stain. Wang Daoyuan was currently gasping for breath. This attack used up almost half of his spirit energy, and a lot of his physical strength was also consumed. Flying Sand Cultivator was frightened by this attack, killing two Peak Zifu Realm cultivators with a single slash. Even if it was unexpected, the difficulty was still very high. Wang Daoyuan pointed at the cultivator holding the collar and asked, "The power of my slash isn't enough to kill two Peak Zifu Realm Blood Devil cultivators. This person's body is weak, and when the white tiger blade cut through his body, I didn't feel much resistance, so he doesn't seem to be a Blood Devil cultivator. Daoyu is experienced and knowledgeable. Take a look at his methods." Flying Sand Cultivator walked forward and used his divine sense to check the corpse. Suddenly, a small purplish-black person flew out from the corpse and drilled into Flying Sand Cultivator's forehead. The situation was urgent, and Flying Sand Cultivator didn't have time to use any spells, so he directly used the thick Earth Devil suppressing seal in his hand, and the small purplish-black person was instantly turned into ashes. The thick Earth Devil suppressing seal had an extremely strong restraining effect on devil cultivators, and a mere devil cultivator's soul couldn't resist it at all. Flying Sand Cultivator broke out in cold sweat and said, "I almost failed miserably. This person can still use his divine sense to attack after his body died, so he should be a Yin Devil type devil cultivator." The devil race is divided into 3 categories: Yin Devil, Yang Devil, and Law Devil. Yin Devil's body is weak, but their divine sense is extremely strong. Yang Devil cultivates the body, Yin Devil cultivates the soul, and Law Devil cultivates magic, very similar to us humans who cultivate essence, chi, and spirit. Of course, there are also those who cultivate all 3. The most commonly seen Blood Devil lineage belongs to the Yang Devil lineage. Looking at this Sound Cultivator's magic tool, it should be the illusory Sound Devil lineage of the Yin Devil lineage. However, this person's inheritance shouldn't be much, and the power of his magic tool should be just SOSO. If we encounter a high-level illusory Sound Devil cultivator, even if we can win, our injuries won't be light. When I discovered the true Devil Blood Lotus that year, I was chased by an illusory Sound Devil cultivator. Chapter 476. Although Wang Daoyuan had 2 Devil Cultivator clones, they were both Blood Devils. Cui Ming had fled to the Blood Devil Ridge from the border of the southern wasteland, so he didn't know much about Devil Cultivators. Zheng Ping had lived in the Blood Devil City since he was young, so he rarely went out. He used to be a member of the Blood Devil Army, so he had access to many ancient books. He knew that there were many factions of Devil Cultivators, but he had never seen any Devil Cultivators other than Blood Devils. His clone didn't know much about the illusory Sound Devil, so he really didn't know anything about it. It was just that this illusory Sound Devil cultivator was too weak. However, the 2 of them together were enough to deal with most Peak Zifu Realm cultivators. They could only blame their bad luck for encountering Wang Daoyuan, who could break through the defense of the shield-wielding cultivator and wasn't afraid of divine sense attacks. Wang Daoyuan put away his white tiger blade and soul-extinguishing bell, and picked up the storage pouches of the two brothers. He hid them under his soul-restricting silk robe, and then put them into the space of the spirit pearl. Flying Sand didn't do much, and he had already taken third brother's wealth, so he naturally didn't have any objections. Inside the space of the spirit pearl, Zheng Ping's clone checked the inheritance of the two devil cultivators. The inheritance of the shield-wielding cultivator was an ordinary devil body refining technique. On the other hand, the illusory sound devil cultivator's wealth was quite good. Apart from spirit stones and some miscellaneous items, there was also a beast-skin book and a jade slip. The beast-skin book recorded the illusory sound devil cultivator's cultivation technique, called the illusory sound soul-seizing technique. It mainly relied on sound waves to attack the opponent's soul, and then refine the opponent's soul to increase one's divine sense cultivation. All devil cultivation techniques were based on the devil race's cultivation techniques, but they had been modified to be more suitable for human cultivators. For example, Wang Daoyuan's doppelganger soul nurturing technique was very similar to the Yin devil lineage's cultivation technique. The five-spirit immortal transformation technique was also a bit similar to the Yang devil lineage's cultivation technique. According to the records left behind by the five-element spiritual master, he had borrowed all kinds of high-level cultivation techniques, including the Yang devil lineage's cultivation technique. Actually, this wasn't strange, as it wasn't rare for righteous Tao's cultivation techniques to borrow devil cultivation techniques. This was especially true for the cultivation methods of the divine sense. Most of them were more or less related to the cultivation methods of the Yin demons. Demonic cultivation methods were originally based on demonic cultivation methods, with some human cultivation methods incorporated into them. Between the two, it could be said that you have me and you and I have you and me. The Yin demon clan's cultivation methods had a deep understanding of the soul. In the future, if Wang Daoyuan wanted to repair the doppelganger soul nurturing technique, he would have to use the Yinma cultivation method as a reference. This illusory soul-seizing technique was a great reference for the doppelganger soul nurturing technique. There was no distinction between good and evil in cultivation techniques, except for cultivation techniques that devoured souls. This was because the value of a human soul was higher than that of any other demonic beasts. Even the value of an ordinary human soul was higher than that of a second-ranked demonic beast, and was comparable to that of a third-ranked demonic beast. Unfortunately, there were a large number of mortals in the human race who couldn't cultivate. Evil cultivators who cultivated soul-devouring techniques could easily kill a large number of mortals to increase their cultivation. If the soul-devouring cultivation method became popular, the human race would be in danger of being exterminated. Therefore, all the righteous cultivators had a common understanding. They could tolerate demonic cultivators who refined their bodies, and even those who refined corpses and raised ghosts. Only cultivators who cultivated by devouring souls would be killed if they saw one. In addition to cultivation techniques, there were also some spells that used sound waves to attack. Wang Daoyuan naturally wouldn't cultivate the sound cultivation method, but he couldn't be ignorant about it. After all, sound wave attacks were good for sneak attacks and he had to be on guard. That bell-shaped collar was also not bad. This thing was called the demonic soul-suppressing bell, a third-rank high-grade magic tool, and its power was only SOSO. There was also a jade slip that recorded the refining method of the demonic soul-suppressing bell. After dealing with the three demonic cultivators, Wang Daoyuan and Flying Sand continued to advance towards the center of the Demon Burial Mountain. Soon they arrived at the center of the Demon Burial Mountain, near a lake with a radius of more than 500 miles. The place where the true demonic blood lotus grew was underground near this lake. This lake was surrounded by lush vegetation, and there were many streams. Naturally, there were also many fierce beasts and spiritual plants. There were many crocodile-type fierce beasts in the lake, which was why it was called the Turtle Dragon Lake. The crocodile-type fierce beasts were generally not small in size, and they had a lot of blood essence, which attracted a large number of demonic cultivators. According to the information obtained by Flying Sand Wanderer, a few days before the true demonic blood lotus bloomed, a strange fragrance would spread out, and no method would be able to seal it. However, this fragrance had a strong attraction to fierce beasts, and it was almost impossible to sneak down and take advantage of it. At this time, there was no flower fragrance, and there were no traces of battle in the surroundings, indicating that the true demonic blood lotus had not bloomed yet. Flying Sand Wanderer was familiar with the place, and brought Wang Daoyuan to a secluded place. He pointed at a piece of flat land and said, "Go down 300 meters from here, and you will find the passage leading to the true demonic blood lotus." The true demonic blood lotus is after all a heaven and earth treasure, and once it blooms, it can't be hidden from people. When the time comes, those demonic cultivators and fierce beasts in the Turtle Dragon Lake will certainly come and get involved. With just the two of us, wanting to seize the true demonic blood lotus and retreat safely is harder than ascending to the heavens. It's better to go down and make preparations in advance to have a higher chance of success. After saying that, Flying Sand Wanderer used the Earth Attribute Escape technique, and escaped underground. Wang Daoyuan also followed closely behind using the Earth Escape technique. 300 meters underground, there was indeed a karst cave and an underground river. Wang Daoyuan followed Flying Sand Wanderer's footsteps, and quickly advanced in the karst cave. After a quarter of an hour, the two of them walked roughly 100 miles, and arrived in front of a spacious stone room. Using his divine sense, he discovered that this large stone room was divided into 4 small rooms, and each small room had a river channel, which was connected to the outside of the stone room. The more Wang Daoyuan looked, the stranger he felt. This stone room was very much like a heart. The 4 small rooms just happened to be 2 atria and ventricles, and the river channels connected to the 4 small rooms from the outside were the 4 large blood vessels that connected to the heart. The only difference from the heart was that the 4 small rooms were directly connected, and the true demonic blood lotus was precisely at the intersection of the 4 small rooms. The moment he entered the stone room, Wang Daoyuan smelled a pungent smell of blood. The spiritual energy in this place was unusual, and it was not as violent as outside, and instead seemed very gentle. It was just that when his body came in contact with this spiritual energy, he had a creepy feeling. He immediately activated the spirit isolating jade pendant, and isolated the spiritual energy outside. This time he did not have that creepy feeling. At the intersection of the 4 small rooms was a pool of about 30 meters in diameter, and the pool water was blood red. In the center of the pool water, there were 5 blood red lotus leaves, and in the center of the 5 lotus leaves was a snow-white flower bud. The stem of the flower bud seemed to be condensed from blood, and it flickered with a demonic red light. However, the flower bud that grew on it did not have a trace of blood, and it was even emitting a holy light. This could really be considered as growing out of the mud without being stained. The surrounding environment was so strange and evil, yet such a holy flower bud grew. Flying Sand Wanderer looked at the flower bud and nodded with satisfaction. The true demonic blood lotus is about to bloom, and it seems that it still needs about a month's time. We really came at the right time and we still have time to set it up. I heard that Dao Yu is proficient in alchemy, artifact and talisman arrays, all 4 paths. This matter of setting up the array will be left to Dao Yu. Wang Daoyuan observed the surroundings and said with a nod, "It's indeed a good place to set up an array. When the true demonic blood lotus blooms, it will surely attract a large number of opponents. At that time, whatever trapping array or killing array will not be of much use. It's better to set up an illusory array around this pool. The fiendish cultivators here are mainly blood devils, and this group of people's divine sense cultivation is not considered profound. Adding on many years of cultivating with fierce beast blood essence, they more or less have a little devil. Not to mention fierce beasts, their intelligence is about the same as ordinary wild beasts. Using an illusory array to deal with them is perfect. After we snatch the true demonic blood lotus, we can escape along the path we came from, and we can also set up several array formations to block the pursuers along the way. However, I'll say the ugly words first. Snatching something from the hands of a group of fiendish cultivators and fierce beasts, no matter how well prepared we are, it's also a job with our heads hanging on our waistbands. It's really hard to say whether Dao Yu can escape alive or not. You can't let me take this risk for nothing, right? Give me what I need. Otherwise, if you die, who am I going to find for it? Chapter 477. Wang Daoyuan planned to ask for the benefits, and then help out for the sake of cooperation. If things didn't work out, he would take the things and leave. But Flying Sand Sanren was also an old fox, and naturally saw through his thoughts. Flying Sand Sanren laughed, "Dao Yu is a smart person, but I'm not a fool. If I give you the things, you can just leave and I can't do anything to you. However, I've already prepared for this." Then he took out a beast skin book and a jade slip, saying, "I can give you the things, but I've placed a restriction on them. As long as I have a thought, the things recorded inside will all disappear. If Dao Yu takes the things and wants to run away, even if I'm about to die, I still have the ability to destroy the things inside. I've integrated a strand of my soul and blood essence into the restriction. If Dao Yu hides it in the secret realm, I can still destroy it. If Dao Yu helps me with all his strength, even if I die here, I won't destroy the things inside. After I die, the restriction will automatically disappear. At that time, Daoyu can also get the things inside. Wang Daoyuan took the beast skin book and jade slip, and checked them with his divine sense, and found that there were indeed extremely complicated restrictions inside. Then he put them into his universe ring and sighed, "They say that people become shrewd with age. I've seen it with my own eyes. Daoyu has calculated all my thoughts, but I still can't bear to part with these two things. Forget it, I'll do as Daoyu says." Loose cultivator Flying Sand said with a smile, "Actually, fellow Taoist still has other options. As long as fellow Taoist swears with your soul that you're willing to marry this old man's daughters and take care of those good-for-nothing sons of this old man. These things can be directly given to Daoyu, and it's a small matter. Although my daughters have some demonic beast bloodline, they're not much different from ordinary humans. Besides, the ancient humans relied on divine beasts and intermarried, so how could there be any pure-blooded humans? Like the royal family of Zhou and Chu, they have some phoenix bloodline. There were also a few countries that had some dragon bloodline. No one treats them as half-demons. Isn't my daughter the same?" Wang Daoyuan waved his hand. "You're really thick-skinned. Are the demon race's bloodline and the divine beast's bloodline the same thing?" The concentration of divine beast bloodline was relatively high, and their talents in all aspects were not bad. They also had a special body structure and could even inherit part of the divine beast's divine abilities. Their lifespan was also longer than the average humans. Except for the fact that they didn't have the unlimited potential of the human race, they were stronger than the average human. "What, do your daughters have this ability as well? Don't talk about these useless things. I'll help you get the true devil blood lotus. I do have some array discs. Let me take a look and see which array formations are suitable for this place." After reaching an agreement with Wang Daoyuan, Taoist Flying Sand let out a sigh of relief. If the two people had a conflict, he really did not have the confidence to obtain the true devil blood lotus. Wang Daoyuan himself was only a low-grade Tier 3 array master. If he wanted to snatch the true devil blood lotus, a low-grade Tier 3 array formation was simply not enough to look at. However, he still had Jingping, this high-grade Tier 3 array master clone. These few years, Jingping had not been idle in the spirit bead space. Wang Daoyuan had him refine array discs. These few years, there were also quite a number of high-grade Tier 3 array discs stored in the space. Wang Daoyuan carefully observed the situation around the true devil blood lotus and finally decided to set up the heavenly fiend chaotic god array here. This array formation was often used to capture fierce beasts. It could disturb the minds of fierce beasts and make them fall into a frenzy. Dealing with some cultivators with heart devils, it also had a pretty good effect. He took out the array discs and hid them in the surrounding rock walls. The core array disc was hidden at the bottom of the pool. This pool of blood-colored water, Wang Daoyuan's spiritual sense could not see through it. He was not afraid of being discovered by others. Installing the spirit stones, he tried to open the array formation. Although the spiritual energy here was somewhat strange, the array formation could still be used normally. Subsequently, Wang Daoyuan set up 3 more array formations on the way here. These 3 array formations were respectively a killing array, an illusionary array, and a defensive array formation. Once someone chased, he could borrow the array formations to temporarily resist the pursuers. Being able to delay for a moment longer would increase the chances of escaping. Furthermore, he also set up simple array formations at a few forks in the road to confuse others. Underhanded methods and escape methods were all prepared. He was just waiting for the true devil blood lotus to bloom. Over 20 days later, the water of the several underground rivers connected to the stone chamber turned blood red. Furthermore, the direction of the river water changed, starting to flow towards the pool where the true devil blood lotus was located. The blood-red color in the pool became thicker and thicker. The lotus leaves of the true devil blood lotus also became like blood jade. 3 days later, the entire pool was like blood jade. At this time, cracks also appeared between the petals on the true devil blood lotus's flower bud, looking like it could bloom at any time. Immediately after, wisps of intoxicating floral fragrance seeped out from the cracks between the petals. This floral fragrance seemed to have the effect of disrupting one's mind, causing one to have an urge to obtain the true devil blood lotus. Even with Wang Daoyuan's divine sense cultivation, it was like this. Those demonic cultivators with disagreeable personalities, as well as those rash ferocious beasts, would definitely be affected even more. Wang Daoyuan and Flying Sand had already left the vicinity of the pool and were hiding in other places. If they continued to stay beside the pool, it would be too easy to attract attention, and it would be bad for fishing in troubled waters. Soon a few demonic cultivators arrived. One of them was a peak Zifu realm cultivator with a heavy sword on his back. When he saw the true devil blood lotus in the pool, he cursed, "I was wondering what could be so fragrant. I didn't expect there to be a lotus hidden here. Watch me pull it out and go back to stew it." After saying this, he was about to jump into the pool and pull out the true devil blood lotus. A peak Zifu realm cultivator with a head full of golden hair hurriedly pulled him back. "Daoyu, don't be in such a hurry. This lotus hasn't bloomed yet, and there's already such a huge commotion. It's definitely not an ordinary spiritual plant. Perhaps it's a natural treasure. Right now it hasn't completely bloomed yet. If Daoyu were to pull it out, its medicinal efficacy would be greatly reduced. Wouldn't that be a huge loss? In any case, this lotus won't bloom for more than a few days. Let's wait for a while longer." Soon, more than 10 demonic cultivators gathered around the pool. Wang Daoyuan and Flying Sand also came out from different karst caves one after another, pretending to have just arrived here. Soon, some high-grade rank 3 ferocious beasts also came in. Although ferocious beasts had low intelligence, they still had innate magical abilities. In this underground karst cave, their bodies were too big, so their movements didn't change. They all controlled their bodies to be within 3 meters. Among them, a high-grade rank 3 crocodile was attracted by the true devil blood lotus as soon as it arrived. A pair of large golden eyes stared unwaveringly at the true devil blood lotus in the center of the pool. Just as it was about to take a step forward, several demonic cultivators released their auras to suppress it. That cultivator with a heavy sword on his back even took off his heavy sword and held it in his hand, as if he was about to attack at any moment. Although ferocious beasts didn't have high intelligence, they still didn't want to throw away their lives. It immediately stopped at the edge of the pool, continuing to stare at the true devil blood lotus. 5 days later, there were already more than 40 late-stage and peak Zifu realm cultivators in this stone room, as well as more than 10 high-grade rank 3 ferocious beasts. More than 100 eyes were staring at the true devil blood lotus. At this time, the blood-red color in the pool was concentrated in the center. 4 hours later, the color of the pond changed from blood-red to a muddy yellow. The lotus leaves and stems were flickering with a dazzling blood-red radiance. Soon after, the lotus leaves and stems also began to fade, turning from blood-red to green. All of the blood-red color was absorbed by the flower bud. The fragrance of the flower grew stronger and stronger, and the petals gradually opened. The breathing of both humans and ferocious beasts became hurried. When there were still 5 or 6 petals that had yet to open, Wang Daoyuan immediately activated the Fiend God Chaos formation. The demonic cultivators and ferocious beasts only felt their chi and blood boiling, and the anger in their hearts couldn't be suppressed no matter what. A moment later, a pure and holy radiance spread throughout the stone room. Everyone felt as if they were facing a supreme god, and they wanted to kneel down and worship it. The true devil blood lotus completely opened, revealing 9 lotus seeds that were like white jade in the middle. Chapter 478. Under the dual effects of the heavenly fiend chaos god formation and the true demonic blood lotus fragrance, the minds of all the demonic cultivators and beasts present were affected. Especially the beasts, whose intelligence was low to begin with, they had already completely lost their minds. The crocodile closest to the pool could not help but take a step forward. How could Wang Daoyuan let go of this opportunity to cause trouble? He waved the bone sword in his hand and slashed at the crocodile. The bone sword was far inferior to the white tiger blade after all, and this crocodile was also high-grade rank 3 with a body of hard armor. The sword slashed down, only leaving a bloody mark on the crocodile's body. The crocodile felt the pain and bit towards Wang Daoyuan. Wang Daoyuan hurriedly dodged and shouted, "How can such a treasure fall into the hands of evil creatures?" Hearing this, the other demonic cultivators also wanted to make a move. The beasts' bodies were strong, and their physical strength was much more durable than their spirit power. Once they fell into a chaotic battle, the beasts might take advantage of them in the end. Everyone was on guard against the beasts, but did not dare to make the first move. Now that Wang Daoyuan took the lead, the others were no longer polite and attacked the beasts around them. In such a narrow terrain, long-range spells were not very useful. In a one-on-one situation, the beasts had a huge advantage, but the demonic cultivators had the advantage in numbers after all. The beast's overall strength was still a bit lacking. Wang Daoyuan took out the demonic note soul-subduing bell and attacked everyone indiscriminately, disturbing their minds. Not long after, all the demonic cultivators and beasts were bloodshot. They completely lost their minds and fell into a berserk state. Flying Sand Sanran was also experienced, How could he let go of this opportunity? He took out the bone wheel and cut off the stem of the true demonic blood lotus. The bone wheel flew back and brought the lotus into his hand. Under the multiple effects, most of the demonic cultivators and beasts did not notice that the true demonic blood lotus was gone. At this time, a thin cultivator took out a bell-shaped magic tool. A low chime of a bell sounded, and everyone was awakened from their stupor. The thin cultivator pointed at Flying Sanrin and said, "A bunch of idiots, someone set up a formation here, you all fell for it. The lotus was also snatched by him, what's the point of fighting?" This bastard had been hiding in a corner to watch the show. He wanted to wait for everyone to fight to the death before he made a move. Wang Daoyuan was infuriated. He had met someone of the same trade. People of the same trade are enemies. I've always been the one to fish in troubled waters, but this grandson dared to fish in troubled waters in front of me. As a gentleman, how could he allow such a despicable person to live in this world? He put away the demonic note soul-suppressing bell and held the bone sword. He scolded righteously, "I've already noticed you. The other Dao you were killing the ferocious beast while you stood at the side and watched. When I was distracted, the lotus disappeared. I think it was you who stole the lotus, right? Besides, your illusory Soundwave demon tribe is adept at using all kinds of underhanded tricks. Perhaps you were the one who set up this formation. Also, you guys are good at sonic attacks. In such a narrow terrain, the Soundwave attack was extremely powerful. We'll fight until both sides are injured. Then you'll kill everyone and take the lotus for yourself. While you're at it, you'll swallow everyone's belongings. Fellow Taoist, you've really thought it through." Upon hearing this, the group of demonic cultivators stared at the skinny cultivator. People of different paths couldn't work together. The demonic cultivators of the Blood Demon tribe and the illusory Soundwave Demon tribe had very different paths of cultivation. They looked down on each other. The ferocious beasts were of different races, and the illusory Soundwave Demon tribe wasn't on the same side. Wang Daoyuan used the Sword Shadow Divine Light technique, and 10 sword shadows appeared out of thin air. He took out the soul-extinguishing bell and covered himself with a thick layer of golden light. Then he rushed towards the skinny cultivator. The other cultivators of the Blood Demon tribe also rushed towards him. The skinny cultivator activated the bell-shaped magic tool in his hand, and an ear-piercing sound came. More than 10 of the Blood Demon tribe's demonic cultivators were knocked down by the sound of the bell. Seeing Wang Daoyuan make his move, Flying Loose cultivator used an escape technique to distance himself. This time he didn't suffer much damage. Wang Daoyuan's soul-extinguishing bell had a long crack after the sound of the bell. The golden light on his body was also shattered. However, he himself wasn't injured. The skinny cultivator used an escape technique and retreated outside the stone room. Wang Daoyuan also used smoke cloud escape to follow him. This was the inside of the demon burial mountain, where the water spirit chi was extremely dense. A black mist covered the entire stone room, as well as the surrounding cave. The black mist can corrode the power of divine sense, so it's very good at blocking divine sense. Knowing that Wang Daoyuan was creating an opportunity for him, Flying Loose cultivator immediately used an escape technique to escape along the path he came from. Seeing that he couldn't escape this calamity, the skinny cultivator shouted before he died, "That person ran away, this one is an accomplice." Then he was hit by the 10 sword shadows. He seemed to be wearing an extremely advanced soft armor, repelling the 10 sword shadows. Wang Daoyuan followed behind the sword shadows, slit his throat, and took the skinny cultivator's inventory bag and bell-shaped magic tool. A few fiendish cultivators followed him out. One of them, a golden-haired cultivator, said, "Fellow Taoist, you said that this illusory sound fiendish cultivator plucked the lotus. Shouldn't you take out his storage bag for everyone to see?" The others also looked at him. Wang Daoyuan didn't dare to deal with so many people at once, so he immediately took out the demonic cultivator's inventory bag and opened it for everyone to see. Inside, apart from a beast skin book, a few jade strips and some miscellaneous pills and demon beast materials, there wasn't any true demonic blood lotus. The blonde cultivator asked, "Dao, you also said that this illusory sound demonic cultivator took the lotus, but before he died he said that you were an accomplice. How do you explain this?" "I suspect that the true demonic cultivator is on Dao Yu. Dao Yu should let us search him." Wang Daoyuan disdainfully said, "Search my body, do you have the qualifications to do that? Usami picked the lotus. I was just killing vicious beasts so I couldn't free my hands." The black fog gradually dispersed and a demonic cultivator shouted, "Someone escaped." The blonde cultivator coldly snorted, took out a long sword and said, "I think that illusory sound demonic cultivator was right. You are that person's accomplice, and you purposely released the black fog to let that person escape. If you don't give me an explanation today, don't even think about leaving this place alive." Wang Daoyuan laughed. The person has already escaped, but Daoyu didn't want to chase after him, and instead wanted to talk nonsense with me. I think Daoyu just wanted to buy time for your accomplice to escape, right? After saying this, he took out the white tiger blade, used the sword shadow godlight technique and condensed 10 sword shadows. At this time, someone in the crowd shouted, "He is Taoist Thunderflame's disciple Wang Daoyuan. Previously, when the Blood Demon army was chasing after him, I saw him use this sword and this technique to kill a late Zifu realm cultivator with my own eyes." The blonde cultivator was now full of energy, and he swung his sword at Wang Daoyuan. Divine Weapon Pavilion's Zifu realm cultivators usually don't pass through the Blood Demon Ridge. Wang Daoyu came to Demon Burial Mountain at this time. I'm afraid you already have a plan, right? Wang Daoyuan swung his sword to block, and the 10 sword shadows attacked the blonde cultivator from different directions. The cultivator with the heavy sword on his back stepped forward, blocking the 10 sword shadows and laughed sinisterly. "The Blood Demon army doesn't dare to offend Taoist Thunderflame, but us loose cultivators aren't. I want to see the strength of a Golden Core direct disciple." The other demonic cultivators also took out their magic tools, preparing to attack. Wang Daoyuan continued to refute, "Don't listen to this person's slander. It's not strange that magic tools and techniques are similar. The Divine Weapon Pavilion is the top force in Beiyuan Xiuxin. Why would they accept a demonic cultivator like me as a disciple?" When everyone heard this, they also felt that it was reasonable. Wang Daoyuan's physical body was strong, and his techniques had special attributes. These were all characteristics of demonic cultivators, and he was indeed not like a righteous cultivator. His identity was exposed, and demonic cultivators were not fools. He could fool them for a while, but he couldn't fool them forever. If he delayed any longer, he really wouldn't be able to escape. Taking advantage of the moment when everyone relaxed their vigilance, he once again used the cloud mist escape, escaping along the way. This time the cultivators reacted. But in the black fog, they couldn't use their divine senses to lock onto Wang Daoyuan. Everyone used their techniques to disperse the black fog, and Wang Daoyuan had already escaped hundreds of feet away. Chapter 479. When Wang Daoyuan ran, the fiendish cultivators naturally knew that he was guilty and chased after him. The golden-haired cultivator did not believe him at all. He reacted the fastest and controlled a golden sword to attack him. Wang Daoyuan's 10 sword shadows were still circling around him. When the sword came, he ran forward without looking back. With a thought, the 10 sword shadows turned around and slashed at the golden sword. The heavy sword from before was made of sufficient materials and the 10 sword shadows could not cut it. This golden sword was a light sword. Under the pincer attack of the 10 swords, it was instantly cut in two. The golden-haired cultivator hurriedly retreated, not daring to run to the front. The other cultivators also took out their Dharma artifacts to attack. With so many Dharma artifacts attacking and only 10 sword shadows, it was inevitable that they would lose sight of one. He took out the black tortoise shield and activated it with all his strength, condensing a black tortoise phantom. Together with the 10 sword shadows, they blocked the attacks together. This underground karst cave was too narrow and there were many twists and turns. Sword kinesis flight was not possible and he could only use the cloud mist escape frequently. The black cloud mist could corrode the power of spiritual consciousness. Once inside, one could not use spiritual consciousness to probe at all. The pursuers were afraid of being ambushed by Wang Daoyuan and did not dare to rush in directly. They could only cast spells to disperse the black cloud mist first. Wang Daoyuan also gradually distanced himself from the pursuers. After running for more than 10 kilometers, he finally arrived at the first array formation he set up. This was an illusion array. Illusion arrays were usually hidden and not easy to discover. There was a defensive array formation on the side of a fork to attract the attention of the pursuers. 20 breaths later, the group of fiendish cultivators caught up. They were all fiendish cultivators of the blood demon lineage. Their spiritual consciousness cultivation was not strong and they were not proficient in array formations. They could not see through the illusion array at all. As soon as the fiendish cultivators came up, they attacked the defensive array formation on the fork fiercely. The defensive array formation could withstand the fierce attacks of cultivators of the same level for a long time, but that was under the condition that it was connected to a spirit vein. Wang Daoyuan's array disc was not connected to a spirit vein at all. It relied completely on middle-grade spirit stones to provide spiritual energy. In just 30 breaths of time it was broken through. More than 10 demonic cultivators ran into the fork in the road to give chase. The others also wanted to chase after him, but the golden-haired cultivator said, "This person is full of tricks. This defensive formation is so obvious, it's very likely that he's deliberately mystifying it. We have more people, so it's better for us to split into 2 groups." The others had no objections and followed the golden-haired cultivator into the illusion formation. The scene in front of them was still very normal. The group of people walked forward quickly, and after walking for about 1,000 feet, another 3 paths appeared in front of them. Everyone split up into 3 groups to pursue. Looking from outside the formation, they seemed to be walking in circles. The function of the illusory array was to interfere with the perception of those who entered the array and cause them to hallucinate. If this group of people did not have an extremely powerful spiritual sense or a Tier 3 array master, then they could just keep going in circles here. When the spirit stones on the formation plate ran out of spiritual energy, the formation would collapse on its own. Wang Daoyuan sprinted all the way, and the pursuers were soon thrown out of the range of his spiritual consciousness. He didn't let his guard down either. When he passed by the 2 places where the array formation was set up, he activated the array formation. After half a cup of tea's time, Wang Daoyuan arrived at the tunnel leading to the surface. Using the earth evasion technique, he escaped into the rock stratum above. When he was about to reach the surface, he released his spiritual sense and discovered that the flying sand vagabond was besieged by 3 peak stage Zifu realm cultivators. Although his thick earth devil suppressing seal was powerful, he was facing 3 demonic cultivators of the same stage at the same time, and the yellow sand gourd was not suitable to be used in this place, so he was still suppressed. Wang Daoyuan suddenly came out from the rock stratum, and using the cloud evasion he attacked an injured peak stage Zifu realm demonic cultivator. The 3 of them were attacking the flying sand vagabond with all their strength, and he was wearing the spirit-restricting silk cloak, so they didn't discover him. Now that one of their companions was killed, the other 2 finally came over, and they quickly pulled away from Wang Daoyuan. Wang Daoyuan glanced at the flying sand vagabond and said, "You're really useless. I have dozens of people on my side and I can still get away, but you're being entangled by 3 people. As for the remaining 2, we'll take 1 each and quickly get rid of them." The flying sand vagabond used all his strength to activate the thick earth devil suppressing seal, and smashed it towards a peak stage Zifu realm cultivator wearing a blood-red robe. Wang Daoyuan was still using the sword shadow godlike technique. This technique's casting speed was fast, its power was strong, and it could be used both offensively and defensively. It couldn't be more suitable to instantly kill a cultivator of the same stage. His target was a brawny man wearing an earth-yellow robe, and his body had a strong fluctuation of earth attribute spiritual energy. This kind of person was generally good at defense. As soon as Wang Daoyuan's 10 sword shadows took shape, the yellow-robed cultivator also took out a huge earth-yellow axe. The earth attribute was known for being vigorous and heavy, so it was very suitable to use this kind of heavy magic tool. Of course, a person who could use this kind of magic tool also had a strong body. The yellow-robed cultivator raised his huge axe, and the surrounding earth attribute spiritual energy quickly gathered on the axe's blade. Wang Daoyuan naturally wouldn't just wait for him to attack. 10 sword shadows circled behind him and attacked several of his fatal points. But his body's protective aura was extraordinary, and the sword shadows were unable to break through his defense. Wang Daoyuan used smoke escape again and dodged this attack. But the yellow-robed brawny man's reaction was very fast, and the huge axe swept towards him. Wang Daoyuan narrowly dodged this attack, and the white tiger blade left his hand, circled behind him and pointed at his neck. The 10 sword shadows also attacked the same place at the same time. At this moment he was waving the huge axe with all his strength, and all his strength was on the huge axe. Even if he retracted his strength he could break his waist, not to mention dodging. The white tiger blade carried the 10 sword shadows and attacked his neck. Blood flashed and the yellow-robed cultivator was beheaded. Seeing his comrade killed, the blood-robed cultivator no longer had the will to fight, and wanted to run away. Flying Sand Cultivator used the thick earth devil suppressing seal to smash him to death. After Wang Daoyuan searched the corpse he said, "Someone recognized me, I can't go north. You've been here before, where do you think I should go?" Flying Sand Cultivator also put away the blood-robed cultivator's storage bag and magic items, and replied, "Go east, there are no large spirit veins within 20,000 miles, and there are very few Zifu cultivators. We'll circle around 10,000 miles, and then think of a way to return to Mingsha Plains." Wang Daoyuan nodded, and the 2 of them headed east. After flying for 4 hours they turned north. At this moment, a rank 3 mid-grade eagle-type demon bird was flying from the west. This demon bird's body was covered in black feathers, and it flashed with a metallic light. From beginning to end, it was following Wang Daoyuan and Flying Sand Cultivator 100 miles behind. This was clearly a demon bird raised by a cultivator. Someone was controlling it, and it always stayed outside the two's attack range. Just relying on sword kinesis flight would not be able to shake off the black eagle. Wang Daoyuan took out the flaming wind kite, and Flying Sand Cultivator put away his flying sword and landed on the kite. Wang Daoyuan used all his strength, and his speed quickly reached 6,000 miles in 2 hours. This black eagle's speed was extraordinary, and it could still follow them 100 miles behind. After flying for half an hour, a blood cloud appeared 100 miles behind them. The blood cloud's speed was extremely fast, and it was at least 7,000 miles in 2 hours. Very quickly the blood cloud caught up to the two of them, and it emitted the aura of a golden core cultivator. Wang Daoyuan and Flying Sand Cultivator's faces immediately turned ashen. They had encountered a golden core devil cultivator. A normal peak Zifu realm cultivator would not even be able to withstand a slap from a golden core cultivator. Although the two of them had backup plans that could threaten a golden core cultivator, a golden core cultivator's strength was powerful, and they had many tricks up their sleeves. If one's own strength was insufficient, and they relied on external forces to fight, the possibility of being played to death was greater. From the blood cloud came a weak voice, "Little friend." Wang Daoyuan did not bother to listen to him, and decisively took out the Purple Thunder Evil Punishing Token and injected spiritual power. A purple thunderbolt struck towards the blood cloud. The Golden Core Devil Cultivator did not expect him to be so wild, to dare to be so arrogant in front of a Golden Core Cultivator. The purple thunderbolt was extremely fast, and before he could react he was struck by the purple thunderbolt. The blood cloud was instantly scattered and a pitch-black figure fell straight down. With a loud rumble, the Golden Core Devil Cultivator smashed a large hole in the ground. How glorious it was when he flew over on the blood cloud, and how miserable he was now. Wang Daoyuan used his spiritual sense to investigate, and found that this guy's spiritual power fluctuations were a lot weaker. His face fell on the spot. Taking the sneak attack of the Purple Thunder Evil Punishing Token and not dying, he was at least a Golden Core Middle Stage Cultivator. Chapter 480. Wang Daoyuan once again injected spirit energy into the Purple Lightning Evil Punishing Token, ready to draw out the Purple Lightning at any time. Without needing him to say anything, Flying Sand Wanderer had already taken out the yellow jade and injected spirit energy into it. The Golden Core Cultivator spoke again, "Little friend, there is no need to panic, I have no ill intentions. Your methods can only deal with early Golden Core Stage cultivators. If I want to attack, you can only injure me with your little things." Wang Daoyuan naturally wouldn't believe his nonsense and asked back, "Since Senior has no ill intentions, why are you chasing us?" The Golden Core Cultivator came out of the pit and raised the blood cloud again, sighing, "I came here to do business with you too, little friend. I was heavily injured in my early years, leaving behind old injuries, causing my chi and blood to decline continuously. Swallowing all kinds of fierce beast blood was useless. Demonic cultivators of the blood demon lineage have problems with their chi and blood. Not only can their cultivation not advance, it will also decline continuously. If I was at my peak, your methods wouldn't even be able to touch my hair. Now, I don't even have the ability to dodge these methods. I asked around for a solution and by chance I found out about the true demonic blood lotus, knowing that the blood lotus seed can cure my chi and blood decline. I have a lot of savings and am willing to exchange the blood lotus seed with you too, little friend." After a cultivator forms a golden core, their essence and chi become one. The so-called golden core has the meaning of immortality. Even when a golden core cultivator dies, their chi and blood won't decline. This person's injuries are really strange, no wonder normal methods can't cure him. Wang Daoyuan was still not at ease. "With Senior strength, if you really attack, the two of us will die without a doubt. Why are you being so courteous with us?" The Golden Core Cultivator laughed awkwardly, "I did have the intention to kill you and steal your treasures, but the method you used to injure me was the work of Lei Yanjinren, so you must be his junior. In the southern wasteland, Lei Yanjinren's name can make Golden Core demonic cultivators tremble. Even if you lend me some courage, I wouldn't dare to do anything to you. With Lei Yanjinren's methods, he should be able to sense the approximate location of the treasures he refined. If I hurt you and Lei Yanjinren finds out, he will definitely exterminate my entire clan." This time Wang Daoyuan believed his words. If he wasn't afraid of his master, killing 2 Violet Palace Realm cultivators would be as easy as flipping his hand. If he wasn't afraid, there was no need for him to waste words with 2 Violet Palace Realm cultivators. Loose Cultivator Flying Sand asked, "May I know how many Blood Lotus Seeds Senior wants? Wang Daoyu and I both need the Blood Lotus Seeds. If Senior wants too much, it will be hard for us to split them." The Golden Core cultivators smiled. "The effect of the Blood Lotus Seed is extremely strong. I only need 2 of them to cure the deterioration of my chi and blood. If you want to form your gold core, you only need 2 Blood Lotus Seeds. It won't affect your distribution. If you need anything, don't hesitate to ask. As long as I can get it, I won't refuse." Wang Daoyuan asked, "Do you have the essence of earth?" The Golden Core cultivator hesitated for a long while before saying, "Little friend, you are making things difficult for me. Even the Divine Weapon Pavilion would find it difficult to obtain the earth essence. With my little ability, I really don't have the heart to help. You'd better change your request." Wang Daoyuan only said it casually. He didn't have much hope. Now that he had found the 5 elemental spiritual fire, the only thing he needed was the materials for the 5 elemental devil suppression seal. The earth essence was hard to come by. Since there were no dragon species in the southern wasteland, he could only ask for the natal feather. He thought for a while and said, "I saw that Senior's Black Eagle seemed to have a natal feather. I want the natal feather." The Golden Core cultivator didn't say anything and grabbed the Black Eagle. Ignoring the Black Eagle's mournful cry, he plucked out the only silver feather and threw it to Wang Daoyuan. Wang Daoyuan caught the feather and kept it in his yin and yang ring. He said, "If that's the case, I don't have any objections." After getting Wang Daoyuan's approval, the Golden Core cultivator let out a sigh of relief. The one he was afraid of was Wang Daoyuan. Soon after, he looked at Loose Cultivator Flying Sand. Since Wang Daoyuan had already agreed, Loose Cultivator Flying Sand naturally didn't dare to insist. If he angered a Golden Core cultivator, he would definitely die. He cupped his hands and said, "I want this Blood Lotus Seed to form my gold core. It's just that I'm just a rogue cultivator and know very little about forming my gold core. I hope I can get Senior's gold core insights." The Golden Core cultivator took out a jade tag and threw it to Loose Cultivator Flying Sand. He said, "This is a small matter. Take it." Loose Cultivator Flying Sand caught the jade tag. After checking it, he took out the true demonic Blood Lotus from his storage bag. At this time, the petals and lotus seed head were already dim. Only the 9 Blood Lotus seeds were still shining with a bewitching bloody light. He took out 2 lotus seeds and gave them to the Golden Core cultivator. The Golden Core cultivator hurriedly caught the lotus seeds and carefully stored them away. He smiled, "This chi and blood exhaustion problem has been troubling me for more than 300 years. I'm finally going to be cured. The waters of the southern wasteland are very deep. The 2 of you won't be able to grasp it. It's better for you to go to the edge of the southern wasteland as soon as possible. The 2 of you are quite sensible and didn't ask for an exorbitant price. I'm actually a bit apologetic. How about this? I'll personally escort you to the edge of the southern wasteland to avoid being intercepted by other Golden Core cultivators." Although he knew that this Golden Core cultivator was afraid that someone would harm Wang Daoyuan and implicate him. But with a Golden Core cultivator escorting him, who wouldn't be happy? After saying that, the Golden Core cultivator rode the blood cloud in front to open the way. Wang Daoyuan rode the Windfire Flying Kite and carried Loose Cultivator Flying Sand, following closely behind. With the Golden Core cultivator opening the way, no one dared to obstruct them. Very quickly, the journey was smooth and they arrived at the southern part of Mingsha Plain. The Golden Core cultivator smiled. Divine Weapon Pavilion and Tai E Sword Sect set a rule that demonic cultivators are not allowed to go north. There are no cultivators in front that can threaten you, so I'll escort you here. Little friend Wang, my name is Yu Shun. Please send my regards to Spiritual Master Lei Yen. Wang Daoyuan and Loose Cultivator Flying Sand cupped their hands, saying, "Thank you, Senior." Soon after, Yu Shun turned around and flew south. Wang Daoyuan and Loose Cultivator Flying Sand let out a sigh of relief. Previously, they didn't keep the Purple Thunder Evil Punishing Token and Talisman. The 2 of them rode their swords and rushed towards Huang Jagged Mountain, entering the small valley. Wang Daoyuan took out the Beast Skin Book and the Jade Slip, saying, "Dao, you should be releasing the seal now, right? Also, how should we distribute the remaining 7 Blood Lotus seeds? This time we were able to avert danger because of my master." Loose Cultivator Flying Sand took the Beast Skin Book and the Jade Slip, directly extracting a strand of his soul and releasing the seal on them. He handed the beast skin book and the jade slip to Wang Daoyuan, saying with a smile, "The success of this trip was all due to Daoyu's strength. I originally planned to give Daoyu 2 blood lotus seeds, but now it's not suitable, so I'm planning to give Daoyu 3. In addition, I don't have a suitable place to form my core. My children's cultivation speed is really too slow. Even now they still haven't reached the Zifu realm. The group of people under him were not people who knew their place. It's not safe to form my core in my base. Daoyu has a lot of connections, so I wonder if you have a suitable place to form your core? If you can find such a place, I'm willing to exchange 1 blood lotus seed for it." Wang Daoyuan smiled. "I do have a place to form my core." Loose cultivator Flying Sand's face was filled with joy. He quickly handed over the 4 blood lotus seeds to Wang Daoyuan and asked excitedly, "Where is the place that Daoyu mentioned?" Wang Daoyuan took the blood lotus seeds and pointed at the tunnel, saying, "I've opened up a cave several thousand feet below. I'll give it to Daoyu. You can escape through the earth from there and find the tunnel." With several thousand feet of rocks blocking it, the commotion during the core formation shouldn't be discovered by the outside world. As long as the golden core heavenly tribulation is attracted, no one will dare to make a move under the heavenly tribulation. As for the matters after the golden core heavenly tribulation, I'm unable to help. He still had a lot of things to do, so he didn't have the time to protect Loose Cultivator Flying Sand. Loose Cultivator Flying Sand nodded, saying, "With this cave I can form my core without worry. Thank you, Daoyu." Wang Daoyuan sent a message to his master to inform him that he was safe. Then he flew towards the west on his sword. His target was the Thousand Blades Mountain. There was a 3rd-rank high-grade metal-attributed spiritual vein there, which could be used to condense the metal-attributed pseudo-spiritual fire. Chapter 481. After leaving the Huang Jagged Mountain, Wang Daoyuan stored all his gains into the spiritual pearl space and handed them over to his clone for inspection. The silver life feather he took from Yu Shun was of the metal attribute. He placed it on the Tai golden flame to nourish it. Currently he was only missing a fire attribute life feather. Fire and metal attribute demon birds were very common. Within 2,000 miles of the sky/mountain range, one could easily find demon birds of these 2 attributes. It wasn't difficult to find a fire attribute life feather. However, after the vermilion bird fan was improved, the fire attribute life feather was the core. Therefore this fire attribute life feather couldn't be too ordinary. It had to be of a higher grade or the demon bird's bloodline was more powerful. Wang Daoyuan wanted to use the life feather of the scarlet-feathered crow. Even if the demon bird lost its life feather, it wouldn't cause any permanent damage. At most, it would take a few hundred years to regrow another one. Unfortunately, this little guy still hadn't regrown its life feather. The blood lotus seed was a heavenly treasure. It had the effect of strengthening the body and replenishing blood. For older Zifu realm cultivators, it was a rare treasure. If they were heavily injured in the future or were forced to burn their blood essence to fight, they could use the blood lotus seed to quickly replenish their blood essence. If he kept this thing, it might become a life-saving trump card in the future. He stored the 3 blood lotus seeds properly and tried to plant the remaining one. According to Flying Sand Wanderer, this thing needed to be nourished with the blood essence of demon beasts. The only blood essence he could obtain in large amounts was from the fierce blood boar. There were a dozen or so fierce blood boars in the space. Among them there were 7 second-grade fierce blood boars. Although the grade was a bit low, he could still give it a try. Even if the blood essence of the fierce blood boar wasn't enough to germinate the blood lotus seed, it wouldn't be damaged. The clone dug a small hole with a diameter of 1 foot and a depth of 2 feet in the reserved area near the life spirit fire. The small hole was filled with the blood essence of the fierce blood boar and the blood lotus seed was placed inside. Whether it could germinate or not would depend on its luck. This time he killed a few demon cultivators and obtained their belongings. However, most of them were things that Wang Daoyuan didn't need. The only thing of value was the item of the illusory Sound Devil cultivator and the defensive spell of the Giant Axe cultivator. There was nothing special about the cultivation technique that the other party had. It was also the illusory soul-seizing technique, but it was slightly different from the one he had obtained previously. Wang Daoyuan wanted these cultivation methods so that he could use them for reference when perfecting the doppelganger soul nurturing technique. It was useless to have different versions of the same cultivation technique. What was valuable was the method to refine his bell-shaped magic tool. This magic tool was called the Dark Sound Soul Burying Bell, and it was also a high-grade 3rd-stage magic tool. This thing had several different uses. It could awaken the mind, attack the soul, injure the opponent's internal organs and defend against sound wave attacks. This magic artifact was much more advanced than the demonic note soul-subduing bell that he had obtained previously. The soul-extinguishing bell that had followed him for over 100 years had been destroyed. In exchange for such an item, it could be considered a huge profit. The cultivator who wielded the giant axe had an extremely advanced defensive spell called the Profound Earth Handle. At that time, Wang Daoyuan had used 10 sword shadows to attack his fatal points, but they were all blocked by the giant axe cultivator's Profound Earth Handle. This Profound Earth Handle was a 4th stage mid-grade body cultivation spell. It required earth attribute spiritual energy and a small amount of qi and blood. Ordinary cultivators could also use it, but their qi and blood were insufficient, so its power would be greatly reduced. Forcefully using this spell could easily cause qi and blood exhaustion, and injure the internal organs. If a body refiner used it, its power would be extremely strong. With Wang Daoyuan's current cultivation using the Profound Earth Handle, he could withstand an all-out attack from a cultivator of the same level. If that giant axe cultivator had not been overconfident, he would have exposed a huge flaw behind him. If Wang Daoyuan did not use the 5 elements devil subduing seal, it would probably take more than half an hour to take him down. Although he had the black tortoise shield, it was inevitable that the magic tool would not be able to protect him. The Profound Earth Handle covered the entire body without any blind spots. It was very suitable for close combat. The 5 elements devil subduing seal's sacrificial refining technique that he obtained from Flying Sand Wanderer was indeed much more advanced than what Wang Daoyuan currently had. Every magic tool had been improved by quite a bit, and they all had 1 or 2 spells attached to them. The fusion and nurturing techniques were also much more advanced than what his master had modified. However, he could not let his guard down. This sacrificial refining technique had changed hands a few times, and it was hard to say if there were any problems with it. He would not directly cultivate this sacrificial refining technique, and would only use it as a reference for future improvements. What he wanted to cultivate were the spells attached to it. Regarding the information about the Earth Essence, the Jade Scroll recorded it in detail. Even the route to enter the underground was clear. It was just that this place was a little dangerous. The place where the Earth Essence could be nurtured was called the Demon-Resisting Mountain. Ever since Wang Daoyuan knew of his origins, he was more concerned about the decimating heaven abyss. In the Beiyuan records left behind by the 5 Elements Taoist, there were many descriptions of the decimating heaven abyss. When talking about the decimating heaven abyss, it was impossible to avoid the demon-resisting mountain. 50 kilometers to the south of the demon-resisting mountain was the decimating heaven abyss. This was the place where the final battle of the demon race's invasion took place. After the decimating heaven abyss appeared, it had been constantly expanding. The berserk spiritual energy that seeped out from the decimating heaven abyss also continuously corroded Beiyuan Xiuxian. The powerhouses that participated in the war that year laid down formations on many mountain ranges with high-level spirit veins to suppress the berserk spiritual energy. This demon-resisting mountain was one of the most important mountain ranges. It could be said that the demon-resisting mountain was one of the most dangerous places in the entire Beiyuan Xiuxian. Those below the Aurus Core stage could not withstand the berserk spiritual energy there at all. Other than that, there were many Aurus Core devil cultivators there, and even remnants of the demon race. With this, Wang Daoyuan did not have extravagant hopes of being able to gather the 5 natal magic tools before reaching the Aurus Core stage. Only after reaching the Aurus Core stage and gathering the other 4 natal magic tools would there be a chance of success if he went to the demon-resisting mountain. He was not afraid of Flying Sand Sanren successfully reaching the Aurus Core stage and intercepting him. With his little bit of ability, he would not have the ability to go to the demon-resisting mountain even after reaching the Aurus Core stage. Half a day later, Wang Daoyuan arrived at the 10,000 Blades Mountain. Looking down from the sky, the north-south mountain ranges were squeezed together, and it really did look like countless swords pointing at the sky. This 10,000 Blades Mountain only had a 3rd-level upper-grade metal-attributed spirit vein. It was impossible for Aurus Core cultivators or 4th-level ferocious beasts to live here. With his current strength, there was nothing that could threaten him. Landing in a valley in the middle of the 10,000 Blades Mountain, he took out the spirit-seeking compass and searched for a suitable place to condense the metal-attributed pseudo-spiritual fire. The spirit-seeking compass refined from the divine ferocious gold mine in the Blood Demon City was not good for other things, but it was still very useful for searching for metal-attributed spirit veins. He quickly determined the location of the main spirit vein of the 10,000 Blades Mountain. Then he found an underground karst cave near the main spirit vein of the 10,000 Blades Mountain and explored a depth of 4,000 to 5,000 feet. Unexpectedly he found a third-level upper-grade black iron crystal vein here. Although the value of black iron crystal was not too high, it contained extremely pure metal-attributed spiritual energy. With a large amount of black iron crystal, condensing the metal-attributed pseudo-spiritual fire could not be easier. He drew out a wisp of primordial unity golden flame and a wisp of dust-returning flame from the spirit pearl space and placed them on the vein. The two flames immediately burned fiercely. He constantly extracted the spiritual energy from the dust-returning flame and sent it into the spirit pearl space to nurture the earth-attributed pseudo-spiritual fire. In the past few years, the wood-attributed pseudo-spiritual fire, whose fire seed was the size of a mung bean, had become a real spiritual fire. There was still a huge gap between the dust-returning flame and the pseudo-spiritual fire. It needed a large amount of earth-attributed spiritual energy to nurture it. He did not care about the primordial unity golden flame and let it burn everywhere. Half a month later, Wang Daoyuan took out a sesame-sized fire seed from the primordial unity golden flame and threw it into the flames that were burning the black iron crystal vein. The fire seed automatically extracted the spiritual energy from the flames to stabilize itself. A day later, the fire seed stabilized and the pseudo-spiritual fire took shape. Wang Daoyuan did not immediately leave this place. Instead, he continued to excavate the vein. The primordial unity golden flame was still a third-level middle-grade spiritual fire. Now he had separated a part of the fire seed. To upgrade it, he needed a large amount of metal-attributed spiritual items. Black iron crystal was an excellent material to nurture the primordial unity golden flame. He took out his clone Shui Ming from the spirit pearl space to help excavate the vein. Chapter 482. Tu Yu Ming and Jing Ping had important things to do. They were working together to improve the spirit gathering pearl. Wang Daoyuan had high hopes for the spirit gathering pearl, but the refinement method was too complicated and incomplete. He didn't have the time to care about these things. Now that he had 2 grade 3 blacksmiths, he didn't have any urgent matters for them to attend to. He just let them study the spirit gathering pearl. Currently, the two of them had some results. At the very least, the amount of spiritual energy stored in the spirit gathering pearl, its speed of gathering spiritual energy, and its reliability had all been improved. However, it was still difficult to refine and wasn't suitable for mass production. Since they had time, he would let them slowly figure it out. Only Chui Ming, an ice cultivator and a grade 3 lower array master, could do some menial work in the spirit gathering pearl. Letting him come out to mine for mystic iron crystals was a form of recycling. With the 2 spiritual fires and the fact that Chui Ming was a demonic cultivator of the blood demon lineage, his physical strength was strong. Half a year later, he had dug hundreds of miles of ore vein and obtained tens of thousands of caddies of mystic iron crystals. The metal spiritual energy contained in the mystic iron crystals was enough to turn the pseudo-spiritual fire into a spiritual fire. At the same time, it could also advance the Tai golden flame to grade 3. It was best to condense the water and fire pseudo-spiritual fires at the Gui Water Nether Spring. There was a ready-made lava lake in the karst cave. He could condense the fire pseudo-spiritual fire and nurture the earth pseudo-spiritual fire at the same time. He couldn't look for the earth essence for now. There was no point in staying in the southern wasteland. He had left the clan for more than 30 years. He had to go back and take a look. After tidying up the ore vein, he left the underground and flew towards the treasured Cauldron Mountain. All these years, Wang Daoyuan had some doubts and needed his master's guidance. These doubts were related to the Golden Rock Wrestling Dragon technique. In terms of power, the Golden Rock Wrestling Dragon technique was second only to the 5 Elemental Demon Suppression Seal. However, he rarely used the Golden Rock Wrestling Dragon technique after he opened his Violet Palace. The main reason was that the Golden Rock's image was redundant and required a lot of spiritual energy to condense. When facing enemies, he mainly used the Feather Blade. Although the Golden Rock's image was powerful in close combat, it wasn't worth it. If he wanted to win in a battle, he had to deal the most damage to his enemy in the shortest time. No matter how strong his spiritual energy was, it was useless if he couldn't use it in a short period of time. With his current strength, he still needed 4 or 5 breaths of time to form the Golden Rock's shadow. Using the White Tiger Blade and the Sword Shadow Divine Light technique, he could kill an ordinary cultivator of the same level in less than half a breath's time. Ordinary opponents didn't need the Golden Rock Wrestling Dragon technique. Against a strong opponent, the time it took to congeal the golden rock's shadow was enough for the opponent to kill him a dozen times over. Of course, the power of the feather blade was still extremely strong. Even though his feather blade was incomplete, a single feather blade was still stronger than a single sword light of the white tiger blade. Its power was about 6 to 7 times stronger than a third-level upper-grade 5 elements divine sword talisman. There was no need to talk about the lethality of 1,000 feather blades. Furthermore, the feather blades were extremely fast. Among all of Wang Daoyuan's techniques, only the Earth Divine Thunder could match them. When he launched a sneak attack, his speed would be so fast that his opponent wouldn't be able to react in time. This would give him more opportunities to kill his opponent in one strike. Furthermore, the feather blade's penetrative power was extremely strong. Its ability to break through defenses was undoubtedly the best among his many spells. Only his natal artifact, the white tiger blade, had a stronger ability to break through defenses than the feather blade. Wang Daoyuan always felt that it was a pity that he didn't have the opportunity to use such a powerful killing move. This time he wanted to ask his master if it was possible to change the feather blade to a spell that could be used independently. When he arrived at the treasured cauldron mountain and was about to report to his master, he heard his master's voice, "Come in." Wang Daoyuan walked into the cave and bowed. Disciple Wang Daoyuan pays his respects to master. Taoist Thunderflame smiled, "Not bad. It seems like you've obtained the metal attribute spiritual fire and your cultivation has reached the late-stage Violet Palace realm. The strength of your soul has surpassed most pinnacle Violet Palace realm cultivators and your body isn't weak. Forming your core won't be a problem. You can attempt to form your core within 50 years. You've been gone for 30 years. Did you obtain the Earth Essence?" Wang Daoyuan replied, "I can't hide my gains from master. I found all 5 elemental spiritual fires. Although I haven't obtained the Earth Essence, I found some clues." Taoist Thunderflame asked, "Where is it? I'll go get it for you." Wang Daoyuan hurriedly waved his hand, "Master, you can't do that. It's in the demon-resisting mountain and it's extremely dangerous. Even without the Kirin seal, it won't hinder my breakthrough. It won't be too late to get it after I form my core." Taoist Thunderflame sighed, "If it was 200 years ago, it wouldn't be a problem for me to make a trip to the demon-resisting mountain. But now that I'm over 900 years old, I don't dare to go there anymore. If I'm seriously injured, I might die in advance. At that time, our lineage's inheritance will be over. You're far stronger than your peers and you also have the 5 elemental spiritual fires. After you form your core, ordinary late-stage golden core cultivators won't be able to do anything to you. At that time, your life won't be in danger when you go to the demon-resisting mountain, so I won't interfere. Alright, do you have any doubts about your cultivation in the past 30 years? Wang Daoyuan smiled, "I have some doubts about magic and I'd like to ask Master to clear them up." Taoist Thunderflame nodded, "If you have any doubts, feel free to speak." Wang Daoyuan took out the golden book that recorded the golden rock wrestling dragon technique and handed it to Taoist Thunderflame. "I obtained this technique a long time ago, but it's mostly incomplete. Apart from condensing the image of the golden rock, there's only a feather blade left. The feather blade isn't weak, but to use it, one needs to condense the image of the golden rock, which consumes too much time. When I was in danger, I was saved by Taoist Swordless and saw him slash out with a sword. Even without a sword in hand he can still use it. I wonder if I can use the feather blade without condensing the image of the golden rock?" Taoist Thunderflame took the golden book and said in surprise, "Golden rock wrestling dragon technique? Good fellow, you're quite lucky. This is the inheritance of Golden Rock God Monarch in the Valley of Beasts." Afterwards he carefully examined the golden book. After an hour he said, "Golden Rock God Monarch calls himself Golden Rock True Monarch in the book. So this should be the inheritance he left behind during the Yuanying period. Unfortunately, it's too incomplete. The complete Golden Rock Wrestling Dragon technique should have more than 10 types of spells, and this feather blade is also incomplete. Unfortunately, this is a Yuanying inheritance and I'm only an Aurus Core cultivator so I can't restore it." Wang Daoyuan sighed, "Looks like I can only put this spell aside in the future." Taoist Thunderflame waved his hand, "You don't have to be discouraged. Although I can't restore it, it's not difficult to not condense the image of the golden rock when using the feather blade. Your cultivation is mostly cultivated by yourself, and there's no one to guide you. You know too little about high-level cultivators." Hearing this, Wang Daoyuan's hope was reignited and he hurriedly asked, "Master, please enlighten me." Taoist Thunderflame smiled, "It's not a secret. Spells like the Golden Rock Wrestling Dragon technique include the Divine Sky Burning technique and your family's Water Dragon technique. They all rely on the Divine Beast charm to cast spells. Once you've comprehended the Divine Beast charm to an extremely deep level, you don't need to condense any image to cast the corresponding spell. You should have comprehended a trace of the White Tiger's charm, and cultivated spells related to the White Tiger Divine Beast. You can try to cast them directly without condensing an image. Unfortunately, your family's ancestor was a brute through and through. He condensed the Water Dragon image extremely quickly, and never considered this problem. Otherwise you would have known about it. Wang Daoyuan thought about it carefully and found this to be the case. He was only at the Violet Palace realm, and already felt that the Golden Rock image was of little value. Those Aurus Core cultivators and even Yuanian cultivators, victory was decided in the blink of an eye, so how could they have the time to condense an image? It seemed that condensing an image was just for the convenience of the younger generation. Chapter 483. Thinking up to here, Wang Daoyuan cupped his hands. Thank you for your explanation, Master. I understand now. These more advanced spells and the projection of divine beasts were just a stepping stone to get to the entry level. Even the life-bound flying swords of sword cultivators can be said to be a stepping stone. In the end, you still have to rely on yourself. Taoist Thunderflame stroked his long beard and laughed. You're a promising child. That brat Swordless understood this principle at the early Zifu stage. Abandoning his life-bound flying sword was his Tao. In my opinion, abandoning it isn't important. There's no need to stick to it. Your ancestor didn't abandon the Water Dragon as a stepping stone and was still able to make a name for himself. Everyone has their own Tao. There's no need to blindly learn from others. Wang Daoyuan nodded and said, Disciple originally borrowed external objects to cultivate, taking in all things in the world for my own use. But Taoist Swordless Tao is to abandon external objects and pursue the Tao from the heart. My Tao is the exact opposite of Taoist Swordless Tao. There's no need to learn from him. Master, this feather blade is still so powerful even though it's damaged. If it can be repaired, its power will definitely rise to another level. Can you help me repair it? It was virtually impossible for a Zifu disciple to repair a Yuanian cultivator's magical art. However, if a peak Jindan cultivator were to repair it, its power wouldn't be too weak even if it couldn't be restored to its original state. Taoist Thunderflame shook his head. It's not wrong that you like to rely on external objects to cultivate. However, don't rely on them too much. You're already at the late Zifu stage. In the future, whether it's cultivating magical arts or refining a life-bound magic artifact, you have to walk your own path. I'm not a metal attribute cultivator and don't understand the feather blade. If I were to repair it, its power wouldn't increase too much and would instead mislead you. It's just as well that you should learn how to create magical arts and techniques. What third-rank magical arts have you learned? Take one out and I'll teach you how to modify it. Wang Daoyuan took out 2 jade slips. Recorded within were the meteor art and the meteor fall technique. These magical arts had a form but no spirit. Its power wasn't much and he couldn't use it now. However, it was simple and clear and easy to modify. He passed the jade slip to Taoist Thunderflame and said, Master, this is a Violet Palace realm inheritance that I obtained when I was traveling in the early Foundation Establishment realm. I often used this spell when I was in the Foundation Establishment stage, but I felt that it wasn't powerful enough so I stopped using it. Venerable Lei Yin received the jade slip and checked its contents. A quarter of an hour later, Taoist Lei Yin returned the jade slip to Wang Daoyuan and smiled. This spell and cultivation technique are a little interesting. I reckon the creator created this spell after seeing a meteor falling from the sky. He probably had never seen a meteorite before and could only imitate it based on his own imagination. To be able to imitate the might of a falling star, he could be considered to have an excellent comprehension ability. Unfortunately, he was still not knowledgeable enough. This spell had a form but no spirit. If it can be infused with the power of the stars, its might will definitely not be weak. After saying that, he took out 5 fist-sized rocks and handed them to Wang Daoyuan. Daoyuan, these are all meteorites. Feel the power in them. Wang Daoyuan took the 5 meteorites and probed them with his divine sense. 100 breaths later, Wang Daoyuan finished his inspection. Taoist Lei Yin asked, What did you see? Wang Daoyuan said with some doubt, These 5 meteorites contain different types of spiritual energy. Some contain earth, metal, and fire spiritual energy. Some contain earth, metal, and water spiritual energy. There's even one that contains all 5 elements. Disciple doesn't know which one is the true power of the stars. Taoist Lei Yen didn't answer directly, used the meteorite fall technique to attack me. Wang Daoyuan condensed a fist-sized flaming meteorite in his hand and threw it at Taoist Lei Yen. Taoist Lei Yen stretched out his hand and purple lightning flashed in his palm. He caught the flaming meteorite and prevented it from dissipating. He continued to inject lightning spiritual energy into it. A few breaths later, the entire flaming meteorite turned purple, and only lightning spiritual energy remained. Taoist Lei Yen threw the purple meteorite at the cave's wall, but the cave's defensive formation didn't even have a ripple. Soon after, he condensed another purple meteorite and threw it at the defensive formation, which caused some ripples. He condensed another purple fireball and hit the defensive formation, causing the ripples to become even more intense. Taoist Lei Yen asked, "Did you see anything?" Wang Daoyuan pondered for a long time before replying, "The first attack only replaced my earth and fire spiritual energy with lightning spiritual energy. The second attack carried the might of a meteorite. The third attack wasn't the meteorite fall technique, but your own technique, Master. This technique seems to contain the true meaning of lightning and fire, and its power is far greater than the previous two." Taoist Lei Yen nodded with satisfaction. "As expected, you saw through it with just a hint. As long as you can steadily inject spiritual energy into a first or second level technique, it's considered a success. For a third level technique, you need to have its form, which is its might. For a fourth level technique, you need to have its essence, which is to integrate the true meaning of lightning and fire, or the charm of a divine beast. Only by comprehending the true meaning can you be considered to have learned a fourth level technique. To create a fourth level technique, you also need to integrate the true meaning. It's enough that you know this, but you're still very far from creating a fourth level technique. I have no use for these third level upper grade meteorites, so you can play with them." Wang Daoyuan took the 5 meteorites and cut off a thumb-sized piece, extracting the essence within. After extracting the 5 elemental spiritual energy from these essences, there was still a very strange energy left. It was like a non-elemental spiritual energy, but it clearly didn't belong to the 5 elements. It didn't have any attribute bias, but could contain the 5 elemental spiritual energy. He used the earth and fire spiritual energy to integrate into this strange energy, and used the meteorite fall technique. The power of this attack was far greater than before. Taoist Lei Yen nodded and praised, "Not bad, your control of the 5 elemental spiritual energy is strong enough to be able to separate the power of the stars so quickly. This power of the stars is related to yin and yang, and is not part of the 9 great spiritual energy attributes. The power of the stars mainly comes from the stars outside the heavens. In addition, there are some special constitutions. For example, Xianjiu Xiao has the astral battle physique, which can be combined with the celestial arcanum sex cultivation technique to cultivate the power of the stars. The power of the stars contains both yin and yang, and it can be used to refine the body and soul. It's also very helpful in forming yuanying. You're still in the Violet Palace realm, so there's no point in researching this. It's fine as long as you know how to create new techniques." Wang Daoyuan nodded and no longer bothered about the power of the stars. He used the Divine Weapon Pavilion's communication channel to send a message to his clan to understand the clan's affairs. It was still peaceful over there, and there weren't any problems that couldn't be solved. He wasn't in a hurry to return to his clan, and he continued to stay in the treasured Cauldron Mountain. If he had any questions, he would ask his master. A one-on-one guidance from a pinnacle golden core realm cultivator wasn't something that anyone could enjoy. Aside from cultivating, he would also constantly improve the meteorite fall technique under his master's guidance. Without the true meaning of the stars, he couldn't improve it into a 4th level technique, but its power had greatly increased. In the past, the maximum power of the meteorite fall technique couldn't compare to the 4th level of the earth divine lightning. Now, after some modifications, its power had reached the level of an upper-grade 3rd level technique. An upper-grade 3rd level technique wasn't much, but in the process of improving the technique, Wang Daoyuan's understanding of techniques had greatly improved. With this experience, he would be able to improve the Golden Rock Wrestling Dragon technique and create other techniques without taking any detours. After staying in the treasured Cauldron Mountain for 2 years, Wang Daoyuan received an invitation card. The invitation card was extremely luxurious, and the cover was made of a 3rd-grade metal. There were even 5-colored phoenix patterns engraved on it. Without a doubt, it was an invitation from the great Zhou imperial family. He opened it and saw that it was indeed from Zhou Jingyuan. It said that there were several dragon species in the Hidden Dragon River, and they knew that he needed pseudo-dragon balls, so they invited him to kill them. Chapter 484. Among the 5 natal Dharma artifacts, the Azure Dragon Pearl was the only auxiliary Dharma artifact. Just by condensing the shadow of the Azure Dragon Pearl, the healing effect was far superior to ordinary healing spells. If he could refine a natal Dharma artifact, how powerful would the healing effect be? Moreover, the Azure Dragon Pearl could also extract the enemy's life force, which could be considered a special killing effect. With this item he would no longer need to bring healing pills. It was just that dragon seeds were hard to find and he had never been able to refine them. Now that Zhou Jingyuan had invited him, how could he refuse? Wang Daoyuan cupped his hands towards Lei Yanjinren and said, "Master, the Prince of Zhou Country, Zhou Jingyuan, has invited me to the Hidden Dragon River to kill a dragon. Disciple's Azure Dragon Pearl has yet to be found, and I would like to go on an invitation. After that, I have to return to the clan to deal with some matters. I'm afraid I won't be able to listen to your teachings for a while." Adept Thunderflame laughed, "Your talent is exceptional. Staying here is a waste of talent. The 5 Elements Devil Vanquishing Seal is your natal Dharma artifact. However, one should never delay one's cultivation for the sake of a natal Dharmic artifact. I'm already over 900 years old. I can probably live for another 70 years or so. I hope you can form your gold core before I pass away. Once you reach the peak of the Zifu disciple stage, you can come back to me. I'll guide you on how to form your gold core. With me here, you won't have to worry about anyone messing with your tribulation." Wang Daoyuan cupped his hands and said, "Many thanks, Master. This disciple will leave now." Spiritual Master Lei Yen gave a few more instructions before Wang Daoyuan left the treasured Cauldron Mountain. He took the Divine Weapon Pavilion's flying ship and headed towards the Hidden Dragon Market of the Zhou Empire's Hidden Dragon County. The amount of water in the Qianlong River was about the same as the Qingli River, flowing from south to north into the Wanchuan River. The streets on both sides of the river were crisscrossed with boats coming and going. It was much more prosperous than Qingli Prefecture. The Hidden Dragon Market was located at the mouth of the Hidden Dragon River and the Wanchuan River. It was divided into 2 parts by the Hidden Dragon River. Wang Daoyuan temporarily stayed in the shop of the Divine Weapon Pavilion in the Hidden Dragon Market. A few days later, a female cultivator came to visit. He claimed to be under the orders of the Crown Prince of the Zhou State to invite Wang Daoyuan to a banquet. In other people's territory, Wang Daoyuan did not dare to be arrogant, so he walked out of the Divine Weapon Pavilion's shop. It was a middle-stage foundation establishment female cultivator. She bowed to Wang Daoyuan and said, "I'm here on the Crown Prince's orders to invite Senior Wang Daoyuan to the banquet." He had stayed in the southern wilderness and the treasured Cauldron Mountain for more than 30 years. So he didn't know much about what was going on here. It was not appropriate to call Zhou Jingyuan by his name in the Zhou nation. He took out the invitation card and pointed at the signature on it. He asked, "Is this the Crown Prince of Zhou Country?" The female cultivator hurriedly nodded. "Yes. His Highness, the Crown Prince, has set up a Hidden Dragon banquet at the Hidden Dragon Pavilion to entertain the younger generation of Zifu disciples. Senior, please follow me." Wang Daoyuan followed behind the female cultivator and soon arrived in front of a tall vermilion building. This tall building had 3 floors. On the first floor, there was a plaque with the words Hidden Dragon Pavilion, written in gold. In front of the Hidden Dragon Pavilion, there were several Peak Foundation establishment cultivators standing guard. Wang Daoyuan took out the invitation card and soon, an early-stage Zifu disciple came to welcome him. "His Highness, the Crown Prince, is holding a banquet on the 3rd floor. Please follow me." Wang Daoyuan followed him upstairs and entered the pavilion. The decorations inside did not seem like a restaurant, but more like a palace. There was a man and a woman sitting on the main seat. The man was wearing a silver robe with 5 colored phoenixes. It was Zhou Jingyuan. The woman was wearing a red dress with 5 colored phoenixes embroidered on it. To be able to wear this and sit side by side with Zhou Jingyuan, she was most likely the princess of Zhou Country. There were not many people in the hall. Apart from the 2 on the main seat, there was only a man and a woman. The middle-stage Zifu disciple was wearing a phoenix-embroidered robe, but it was of a lower standard than Zhou Jinyuan's. He should be a member of Zhou Country's royal family. The other person was wearing a white dress with black bird embroidered on it. It seemed to be the robe of the Song Country's royal family. Seeing Wang Daoyuan walk in, Zhou Jinyuan quickly stood up and said, "Daoyu, I've been waiting for a long time. Wang Daoyuan naturally could not be rude when the crown prince of Zhou country treated him with such respect. He bowed and said, "Thank you for your invitation, Your Highness." Zhou Jingyuan pointed to the seat on the right and said, "Daoyu, there's no need to be so polite. Please sit." Wang Daoyuan sat on the right and said with a smile, "Your Highness, there's no need to be so polite. I'll sit on the second seat." Zhou Jingyuan pointed to the woman in the red dress beside him and introduced, "This is my younger sister, Zhou Jingyan. She's also the apple of my father's eye." Wang Daoyuan stood up and bowed. Zhou Jingyan also stood up and bowed. Zhou Jingyuan then introduced the other two people. One of them was the Zhou Emperor's nephew, Zhou Jingkai. The other was the Song country's emperor, Song Yan's younger sister, Song Yi. The Song country's royal family and the Zhou country's royal family were connected by marriage. Song Yi could be considered Zhou Jingyuan's cousin. Wang Daoyuan also greeted the two of them. Zhou Jingkai gracefully returned the greeting. On the other hand, Song Yi had an indignant expression as if she had a grudge with him. Wang Daoyuan was confused. He did not offend her when they first met. During the battle at Wuxia Pass, Wang Daoyuan had only stayed behind and did not have any grudges with the Song country's royal family. Anyway, it would be difficult for him to have any dealings with the Song country in the future. Who cared what the Song country's princess thought? Since he was Lei Yan's disciple, the Song country's royal family would not dare to cause trouble for him. Soon after, many young Violet Palace realm cultivators entered. Zhou Jingyuan introduced them one by one. Among the people present, there were the princes and princesses of the Zheng country, Wei country, Yu country, and the other countries. The royal families of these countries were all side branches of the Zhou clan. There were also some cultivators from clans and loose cultivators similar to Wang Daoyuan. These cultivators from clans and loose cultivators were all late-stage or peak Violet Palace realm cultivators. They were all below 200 years old and could be considered geniuses. There were no more empty seats in the hall. Zhou Jingyuan said, "Recently, traces of dragon species have appeared many times near the mouth of the hidden dragon river. I sent people to investigate and found a total of 9 upper-grade rank 3 pseudo-dragons." The moment he said that, everyone became excited. There were only about 30 people present. If all 9 dragon species were to be killed, it would be an average of 4 people per dragon. An upper-grade rank 3 dragon species was full of treasures. Furthermore, dragon species were rare now. It was not easy to get a quarter of the dragon species. Zhou Jingyuan continued, "In the past there were only 1 or 2 dragon species. There were no more than 3. The scene of 9 dragons appearing together has not been seen for thousands of years. Therefore I have invited all of you to attend this event together. In another half a month, the hidden dragon river will have a spirit chi tide that occurs once in 60 years. At that time, many demonic beasts will gather and 9 pseudo-dragons will definitely appear. Although the hidden dragon river is Zhou country's territory, since ancient times, the pseudo-dragons that appear here have always been occupied by those who are capable. When the 9 dragons appear together, it will depend on Daoyu's ability to kill the dragon species. Everyone is here. Let's start the banquet." He clapped his hands and more than 30 beautiful maids served various dishes and wine in front of each cultivator. Then a dozen men and women walked into the hall. The men walked behind everyone with musical instruments in their hands. The women were all stunning beauties. They walked to the center of the hall. These people's clothes were decorated with phoenix-like patterns. They should be a distant branch of the Zhou royal family. Zhou Jingyan also walked down from the main seat. Zhou Jingyuan waved his hand and music sounded. Zhou Jingyan led a group of dancers and danced. The guests in the hall were enjoying the music. Some of them looked at Zhou Jingyan and drooled. Wang Daoyuan frowned and was shocked. This music was familiar. It was very similar to the rainbow feather dance in his previous life. What was the relationship between the Zhou family and Huaxia in his previous life? Even the music was so similar. Zhou Jingyuan raised his cup and said, "Everyone has come from afar. As the host, I toast to Daoyu." Everyone hurriedly raised their cups and toasted each other, downing the wine in one gulp. After the dance, Zhou Jingyan returned to the main seat. Everyone also toasted him. The music stopped and everyone drank a few cups. Zhou Jingyuan said, "Daoyu, please feel free." He then said to the musicians and dancers, "Continue playing and dancing." Chapter 485. The Zhou clan was worthy of being a royal family with tens of thousands of years of history. The quality of their food and wine was not something ordinary people could compare to. The dishes were made from third-rank demonic beasts and spiritual plants. The wine was even more extraordinary. The raw materials were third-rank high-grade and had been stored for hundreds of years. Wang Daoyuan usually drank the spirit peach dew. Although its recovery effect was not weak, the raw materials were second-rank. The main reason was that it had been stored for a long time. During the banquet, Zhou Jingyuan frequently toasted the guests. Zhou Jingyan was a heavenly beauty. Previously, she had danced the rainbow feather dance, which made the male cultivators somewhat restless. The Zhou clan was similar to ordinary cultivation clans. Even distant relatives of the same clan could marry. Therefore, the princes of Wei, Zhang and other countries also frequently talked to Zhou Jingyan. Wang Daoyuan was still puzzled about the relationship between the Zhou clan and his previous life's Huaxia. He did not even look at Zhou Jingyan. When the banquet ended, everyone was full. The princes and princesses of each country naturally had their own residence. Wang Daoyuan and the other cultivators of the clans and rogue cultivators were temporarily staying in the Veiled Dragon Pavilion. After everyone dispersed, only Zhou Jingyuan and Zhou Jingyan were left in the hall. Zhou Jingyuan asked Zhou Jingyan, "Today's guests are all around the same age. Do you like any of them?" Zhou Jingyan disdainfully said, "In terms of talent, these people may be dragons and phoenixes among men. But in terms of bearing, any member of our Zhou clan's main bloodline is better than those people. Even the princes of Wei, Zhang and other countries are like lechers." Zhou Jingyuan smiled and said, "Then what do you think of Wang Daoyuan?" He didn't say a word from beginning to end. When you were dancing, he only glanced at you and did not look again. Zhou Jingyan looked indignant. "Humph, he didn't even look at me. There must be something wrong with his eyes." Zhou Jingyuan was amused by her. "Look at you. You said he was a lecher and had no manners. He didn't look at you and you said there was something wrong with his eyes. In front of you there are no good men in the world. In my opinion, this Wang Daoyu does not have a problem with his eyes. He is a gentleman who is not moved by beauty." If Wang Daoyuan heard this, he would definitely say, "Brother Zhou knows me best." Wang Daoyuan followed the attendant to a small courtyard behind the Veiled Dragon Pavilion. This was the guest room of the Veiled Dragon Pavilion and also his residence. Behind the small courtyard was the intersection of the Qianlong River and the Wanchuan River. It could be considered a river view house. After Wang Daoyuan settled down, he did not stay idle. His spiritual consciousness was constantly observing the situation in the river. Zhou Jingyuan came to visit not long after they entered the small courtyard. Wang Daoyuan naturally treated him with courtesy. After the two of them entered the room and sat down, Wang Daoyuan cupped his hands and asked, "What matter does your highness have?" Zhou Jingyuan smiled and said, "It's nothing important. There are too many people at the banquet, so it's not convenient for me to chat with Daoyu. I saw Daoyu frowning frequently at the banquet. Is there something you're dissatisfied with?" Wang Daoyuan waved his hand and said, "No, it's just that I seem to have seen this dance music in an ancient book, but I can't remember it at the moment. May I ask your highness, is this dance music called the Dance of the Rainbow Feathers?" Zhou Jingyuan was stunned for a moment before he replied, "Daoyu is really experienced and knowledgeable. This is indeed the Dance of the Rainbow Feathers. It's a song passed down from ancient times. My Zhou country loves music and has collected many ancient songs." Wang Daoyuan pondered. This Dance of the Rainbow Feathers was something from the Tang dynasty. Wang Daoyuan had only transmigrated 1,000 years ago. For cultivators, 1,000 years was not even considered ancient times, let alone ancient times. Even the Zhou family, a royal family with tens of thousands of years of history, said that it was passed down from ancient times. Then this dance music in Beiyuan Xiuxian must have been passed down for tens of thousands of years. As for the relationship between this world and his previous world, it was even more difficult to understand. It was not convenient for him to ask directly, so he changed the topic and said, "During this banquet, the princess of Song country was hostile to me. May I know why?" Zhou Jingyuan smiled and said, "This has nothing to do with me. Song Yi is Song Yan's sister and the niece of the 6th prince of Zhao country. You scolded her mother and beat her cousin. Do you expect her to welcome you with a smile? Song Yi is also a disciple of the Wind Snow God Palace and is from the same sect as Zhao Qingshuang. Many people in the Wind Snow God Palace are not convinced that you defeated Zhao Qingshuang. Song Yi might even cause trouble for you. You have to be careful." Wang Daoyuan smiled and said, "It's okay. I've traveled in the southern wasteland for decades and often dealt with demonic cultivators. I've seen many dangerous things. Sparring is just a small matter." The two talked for a while, then Zhou Jingyuan got up and left. For cultivators, half a month was just a short time to meditate and cultivate. Soon it was the day of the spiritual energy tide. Before dawn, Wang Daoyuan felt that the concentration of spiritual energy in the area was slowly rising. There was a level 3 spirit vein in the hidden dragon market, but the concentration of spiritual energy had risen to a level 4 spirit vein. Moreover, the concentration of spiritual energy was still rising. Soon the sun rose. The rising concentration of spiritual energy did not stop. Instead, it rose even faster. A servant shouted outside the small courtyard, "Senior Wang, the crown prince wants to see you." After Wang Daoyuan tidied up, he walked out of the small courtyard and followed the servant to the top of the 3rd floor of the Hidden Dragon Pavilion. There was an open-air platform with tables, chairs, and other things. At this time, more than 10 people had already arrived. After half a cup of tea's time, all the participants of the banquet had arrived. More than 30 servants served tea to everyone. Zhou Jingyuan smiled and said, "This is the spiritual energy tide at the mouth of the Hidden Dragon River that occurs once every 60 years. Before noon, the concentration of spiritual energy here will continue to rise." This spirit chi tide had existed since the founding of the Zhou nation. It was just that it had been weaker and weaker each time. Since 900 years ago, the tide has not continued to weaken. According to the records of previous years, the concentration of spiritual energy will rise to a level 4 spirit vein. However, the spiritual energy tide has been getting stronger and stronger recently. The last spiritual energy tide reached a level 4 spirit vein. When the concentration of spiritual energy reaches its peak, aquatic demonic beasts will gather here and take this opportunity to improve their cultivation. Every time there is a spiritual energy tide, dragon species will appear here. Noon will be the time for all of you to show your prowess. After hearing this, Wang Daoyuan suddenly remembered that his master had once said that the concentration of spiritual energy in Beiyuan Xiuxian had been declining ever since it was isolated from the great cultivation world. Wang Daoyuan naturally knew that this was the reason why the main spirit vein of the great cultivation world in the Sky Beheading Mountain range was cut off. More than 900 years ago, the concentration of spiritual energy in Beiyuan Xiuxian had stopped declining. The spiritual energy tide in the Hidden Dragon River had also continued to weaken before, and it also stopped weakening after 900 years. In that case, the spiritual energy tide in the Hidden Dragon River and the concentration of spiritual energy in the entire Beiyuan Xiuxian might have some connection. Now that the spiritual energy tide in the Hidden Dragon River was gradually increasing, the concentration of spiritual energy in Beiyuan Xiuxian might also be slowly increasing. He was still only a Zifu realm cultivator, so he did not have a direct perception of the minute changes in the spiritual energy in the entire cultivation world. If the concentration of spiritual energy was really changing and Yuanning cultivators could appear, that would be good. Then he could stay in Beiyuan Xiuxian and cultivate until he reached the Yuanning stage before heading to the Sea of Seven Stars. The higher his cultivation, the safer he would be when he went out to sea. At this time, the concentration of spiritual energy in the Hidden Dragon River had already reached the level of level 4 spirit vein. It was only the end of the morning and there was still an hour before noon. According to this trend, the concentration of spiritual energy at noon should be more than level 4 spirit vein. Everyone discussed Tao on this open-air platform while looking at the river scenery. After 2 hours, the concentration of spiritual energy had already reached level 4 spirit vein. Zhou Jingyuan smiled and said, "It seems that the concentration of spiritual energy in this spiritual energy tide is higher than last time. Last time, the concentration of spiritual energy only reached level 4 spirit vein at noon. This time, it reached level 4 spirit vein a quarter of an hour earlier." The concentration of spiritual energy was still rising. An hour quickly passed, and the concentration of spiritual energy had also reached the highest level of level 4 spirit vein. The concentration of spiritual energy at this time was almost comparable to the concentration of spiritual energy at the bottom of the treasured tripod valley. The spiritual energy there was forcibly suppressed by the spirit binding array, and it was very close to level 5 spirit vein. According to this trend, in another few hundred years, the spiritual energy tide here might have level 5 spirit vein. You're tuning in to the Han Li's Wuxia Chronicles YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.